Blur. Right. So you're set? I can go ahead. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Interim manager / clerk, Halenga, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxon,
Present.
Mayor Brown,
Present.
Councilmember Sweet,
Present.
Councilmember Tucson,
Present.
Councilmember D Simmons, Councilmember King.
Present.
With 5 present, there is a quorum.
Please rise as you're able for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag, United States of America, to the republic which it stands,
of
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will entertain a motion for agenda approval.
I move to approve the agenda with the following amendment that Resolution B, Ward 2 vacancy be moved to A, and that the city manager candidate vote be moved to B.
All right, is there support?
Seriously? Can I have a moment?
Mr. Earl, is that, I don't know how that works. A moment, you want to speak out?
Yeah, I want to talk to this point. Last meeting we had, there was comments that this should go first, that the city manager candidate vote should go first. Because it would be unfair to have a Ward 2 person come in and immediately vote on that. I've spoken with both candidates and they have reviewed all the interviews and the interview materials. It would also be unfair to leave Ward 2 underrepresented in a decision of this magnitude. This is possibly one of the most important decisions we make, and to have there's already been acknowledgement that Ward 2 has been underrepresented for the last several months. And that seems way more unfair. And I've been contacted by constituents saying exactly that this is something fairly important that needs to have a full weight of a full council. The unfairness about there is not without precedent that new people have weighed in on things that they were not present for. For example, the salary increase for the previous city manager. People weighed in on that when they weren't part of the evaluation process. So those statements at the last meeting, I don't think are relevant to the situation. So I would ask that somebody second the motion.
Okay, so there's no support for the motion. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So we're gonna have our third goal session, followed by public comment, followed by the resolution. So city manager, I'll hand it over to you.
And we have Sharonda online participating via Zoom.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I appreciate everyone's flexibility in terms of me logging in virtually. And I'll ask maybe before we get started, I know that there's time for a public comment and some other things after, if there's a certain time you'd like me to just make sure that our portion of the session is wrapped up.
So this is supposed to be our third and final session. So I think we need to just get it done.
Okay, awesome. And then please feel free, if there is anything, just to let me know. And then Andrew, would I be able to share my screen?
Yes, you're a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. It says host disabled screen sharing. And maybe while we're doing that, if I could maybe ask um, the council if there is anything that's coming up to mind from our last meeting, then maybe I'll just take a moment to just see how people are feeling from the department presentations.
I will add that we have two departments that would still need to report.
And do we want departments to report at this time, Andrew?
I don't know, what does council feel? Would you like to hear the department reports first?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you could unshare your screen and I'll bring that up.
Sounds good.
Okay, up first, we have Reagan Basipika, the finance director.
Yep. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This will be our objectives for the Finance Department. First will be around the area of operations. We'd like to upgrade the city enterprise resource planning system. Our main goal is to integrate all financial, treasury, HR, building, and community development software. And the task here is to identify the best system, which is user-friendly and will suit each department's needs. So we have already started to look for a software that would solve most of the needs from the different departments. And once we identify that software, we would then need to ask our employees to commit to learn to the new system, because our software is only as good as the users. Next is also we'd like to create an asset management plan for the city. Our goal is to build a guide document regarding the city assets. And the task here is to build a team that would be responsible for planning and implementation of an asset management plan. So the city currently we already have a capital improvement plan, but this document is not comprehensive enough to detail the current and future needs of the city. Some of our staff now have completed the asset management champions program, and this will help us to develop an asset management plan for the city. Personnel wise, we'd like to do retraining and cross training of employees. The goal is employees to be able to cover the other employees in case of absences or leave. Our task is to establish efficient training procedures and creating instructional cheat sheets for different processes. So we've had turnover in our personnel, and one of the best practice is to have our employees cross-trained to avoid any disruptions in city operations. In the accounting area, we'd also like to do continuous training and testing of employees regarding cybersecurity. Our goal is to ensure a risk-free and secure environment for keeping our data network and devices against security threats. Task is to create a system that will regularly train and update employees regarding cybersecurity. Our employees have been targets of all cybersecurity threats, and it is important that we continually be informed and trained about this. And that's it for the finance department. Thank you.
Right, up next, we have Chief Moore.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present on the 2024 goals for the police department. First slide, please. Before we get into 2024, I want to have a small recap on 2023 goals. The police department was able to complete its implementation and replacement of the in-car camera system. Siri is being very nosy today. I don't know what that's about. My apologies. Wow. But we were able to complete that goal in late October of 2023. And that had been a goal with the organization since 2022. That was very critical. It was that we get our in-car camera system up and running, especially since we have a newly adopted transparency model. And we want to make sure that we have every opportunity to capture events occurring in the police department. Next slide, please. Moving on to the strategic goals for 2024 in the PD. The first is going to be department reorganization. Next slide. And I don't know if you can blow that up for the viewers to see. Oh, they have copies. Okay. The reorg reflects the creation of our two divisions, field services and support services. It also reflects a reduction of the lieutenant rank to 2, down from 5, which has allowed the creation of 3 additional officers, which will add 1 to our investigations, and we will create a community relations unit. So that's our reorg goals for this year. Next slide, please. The next area is, of course, our priority is to hire and train 10 new officers in 2024. This year, we have hired 6 new officers, and we are on track for an additional 5 to be in our end of April, May Academy at Washtenaw Community College. Next goal we have, of course, is to improve our competitive wage gap. One of the ways we would like to do that is by introducing education and other incentives to attract the best and brightest officers to YPD. Next goal, of course, is leadership development. One of our goals is to create a chief's leadership cohort. Second is to bring in an outside consultant to conduct additional leadership training. And then I'd like to send all of our first line supervision to FBI Leader, which is a series of first line supervision courses designed for law enforcement. And it'll be very effective at to begin succession planning for our organization. The next goal is our policy revisions to reflect best practice in modern policing. We have begun the process of extensive policy review and revision, and we're starting with our high severity policies. An example of this is our newly implemented vehicle operations and pursuit policy. It is now a restrictive policy consistent with best practices. Next goal is our process improvement through technology. We are on track to implement Guardian tracking software, which will give us the ability to track our uses of force, quarterly reviews, internal investigations, leave, documented performance feedback, and a host of other necessary tracking mechanisms so that we can improve our transparency with our community. Next, we will want to replace our dated fleet. We have a goal of adding 4 vehicles to the fleet this year, and we're doing that through a series of savings by trading in some of our vehicles and using the cost savings to help us, meet that goal. So we are on track to do that this year. Next goal is to establish a true community relations unit. As you saw in the new organization chart, it reflected that unit. The focus is going to be, of course, community engagement, and especially with our youth, Ypsilanti youth. And lastly, capital improvements to our facility. Our goal this year is, of course, to refresh the interior of the facility to help instill pride in our organization, and also create and completely outfit a true briefing and training room and several other internal upgrades to the facility. And that's all I have.
A question about the pursuit policy.
course.
Our previous chief had told us that it was a restrictive and that it was up to standards for best practices. You're saying that now with these changes it is, so it hasn't been.
Is this still on? All I can say is the policy that was in place was a very open policy. In essence, Ypsilanti police officers could pursue for any infraction. So that's a very open-ended pursuit policy. If you like, of course, we can provide you the new policy, but it is a very restrictive policy,
I'd like to see that. That'd be
of
great.
course.
Okay, so we had said we would hold our questions for department heads. So is it back? No, you're okay. That was a good question. Is it back to Sharonda now, or is it time to ask everyone?
If there aren't any further questions, then we can move on.
Okay. Maybe for clarity, the next steps in your process, Sharonda, are going to be what exactly? And should we now pause and ask questions that folks had for other department heads, or are you going to walk us through that process?
So I think that I'll throw out two options because I just want to make sure that this is a process that feels good for everyone. So we can start with questions, or I can start with some of the themes that have come up from what council members have already, stated, and then we can do questions that the council might have. I'm open, but we can do either or.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions that council's prepared to ask the department heads, or would you like us to just keep moving forward until things come up with in the facilitation? Yeah, okay. All right, the floor is yours.
Well, it is good to see you all again. And so this is our third and final session. And so just to recap from our last meeting, the department leads had a chance to sort of share out, things that happened last year, goals for this year, some of their key priorities based off departments, and then council members were able to ask questions. So again, I'll also just say if there's a moment in time where I'm presenting, but a question is coming up, it's important to ask a department lead. I think that it will be helpful as you all are in this decision-making process. So at any point, it's okay to feel free for us to set aside some time to do that. And so just to give you all the agenda for today, so I will share, just to recap people, the goals, or at least some of those bigger picture strategy goals from last year. I'll share a couple just kind of quick overview recommendations that I gave last year. We will do that prioritization sheet that was sent out to all of you. And then we'll do an activity where you will sort of partner with another council member. And then I'll have you all sort of see if you can come up with maybe what you think are sort of the top 5 or several priorities. And then we'll also just talk about, is there anything that maybe needs to be in our sort of like parking lot? So things that might not be on the, goal priorities at this moment in time, but things that you should all keep in mind. We'll have a group debrief, and then we'll talk about closing and next steps. And so really our goal is to think about this in 2 ways. So thinking about sort of our, the fiscal priorities. So where are things maybe need a specific budget line item? It's also to think about and establish those sort of non-budgetary action items and objectives for 2024. And then, if time permits, to sort of really talk about what are high, medium, and ongoing priorities. But at least leaving this conversation really sort of sharing what are the high level areas of focus and priorities. And from what I recall last year, we sort of came to a conclusion as to what those might be. And then you all were able to, as a group, make a vote to those, I believe, at your next session. And so this is a combination, again, of what you all shared out in terms of your vision. And so I'll just read this. Again, this is not set in stone, but just something to think about in terms of a way to ground us in this conversation. So in 3 years, the city of Ypsi stands as a beacon of unity and inclusion, where diversity and equity are interwoven into the community's fabric. Our commitment to improved services has elevated the quality of life for all residents, fostering forward movement that solidifies Ypsilanti as a welcoming haven for everyone. And so as you all think about these goals and these priorities, I think pride, heritage, diversity, continuing to keep all of those in the back of your mind as you all decide and sort of hone in on what are the goals. So just to recap for people for last year, some of those priority areas were public safety, economic development, operation administration, community outreach, infrastructure, policy, and process. I will say that it seems as if those areas are very similar this year as they were last year. And so I'll share just a couple thoughts before we get into the planning process about that. And then these are the 2023 strategic goals. And I will ask, do you all have a copy of this slide? I'll make sure to read it if not.
No, we have it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so I'm wondering if there's anyone who would mind reading maybe the first two goals.
I can do.
Yeah, cool.
Microphone back up here. 2023 goals, strategic goal 1, retain and attract staff. Retain and attract staff by ensuring they have the tools necessary to do their jobs well and by providing performance incentives. Strategic goal 2, community mental health. Identify community partnerships to achieve the goal of a regional non-emergency response plan and facilitate the creation of a response team. Would you like me
And
to
then
go on?
Let's keep going.
if you would like to read all 5, you
Sure, I
go
can
for
do
it
that.
tonight. That's perfect.
My NPR voice.
Yes.
Strategic goal 3, community engagement. Engage our residents through commissions, neighborhood hubs, communications, outreach tools, events, and activities to sustain our community. Strategic goal 4, invest in infrastructure. Invest in infrastructure to enhance community pride and ensure those that live, play, and work may do so safely. Strategic goal 5, revenue generation and housing. Generate revenue to provide adequate city services and examine different housing opportunities to meet a multi-generational need and economic needs equitably.
Thank you. And I will pull up, which you all might not have as a copy in this slide deck, but these are some of the 2023 milestones. And so again, we just saw some of those overarching goal areas, and these are some of the milestones. So hiring a police chief, the fire department being fully staffed, approving a community benefits agreement for the development of 206 North Washington Street, sort of receiving state funding for the remediation of Water Street, updating the property disposition policy, entering into an agreement with Washtenaw County to provide early voting sites, the restriction of Huron River Drive, Michigan Ave, and Huron, removing slip lanes from Hamilton, Washington, and Cross and Huron. And so these are some of the things that kind of came up from last year in terms of what has been accomplished. So there's been lots to celebrate. And so I just wanted to also note that as well. And so before we go into the process of really trying to come up with some consensus of what are maybe those high priority goals, these are some of the recommendations for last year. These are overarching recommendations that I believe were shared with the council at some point. And so again, developing a consensus of high, medium, and low priority items is one of the first recommendations. Identifying maybe what are priorities that are just important, but necessarily don't require, to be a fiscal priority. And then also setting some annual dates to approach the budget and the goal process. And so I'm recommending that you all maybe even after this, if there are a few times in the year, checking in about some of these goals. And then I know that this conversation has come up multiple times and there's things in the works, but continuing those community partnerships with stakeholders, finding ways to kind of share out those bigger picture goals. So I know that communication with stakeholders has been something that the city has talked about continuing to always enhance. So keeping that in mind, even in terms of these goals. And then also sort of continuing to work on cross-collaborative approach in terms of hiring and retention. And I've also even heard kind of at the last conversation when staff were sharing out kind of opportunities for people to integrate and collaborate with one another across departments. And so in terms of a couple other things that I think could be helpful is, we started this year talking about some of the values. I think that thinking about maybe working backwards in the future and thinking about maybe just revisiting those values or having those continue to be explicit in that decision-making process. And then, sharing out, the departments sharing out, then having the city have an opportunity to sort of kind of brainstorm those goals, I think can really streamline that process. And then again, having whether it's biannual, quarterly, you all are quite busy, but maybe some portion of, your meetings continuing either to have updates from department leads around what's going on or to look at your goals and the way in which you've achieved those goals, thinking about not just the product, but sort of even the process of the goals for this year, taking a moment again, whether that's, quarterly or whether that's twice a year, and really looking at that from a values-based standpoint. So whatever goals you all decide are high priority, are you doing that in a way that feels like it's honoring diversity, it's honoring pride, it's honoring heritage? I know we have these conversations sometimes, at the beginning of the year, but I think that finding ways, and that is between you all as a council, to continue to integrate that work sort of throughout the years, I think can be quite helpful. And so I will stop for just a moment before I share sort of the priority items that the council members had all written down. I'll stop and maybe this might be a good time to see if any questions, thoughts, comments are coming up either from what I've shared or that are for the department leads.
Well, the only thing that I would say is that I think this has come up before, but you brought it up in your report out that I think that it'd be great for us to prioritize time throughout the year to like come back to our goals and where we are on them. Even if it's just briefly, just to check in, so that we don't, get to a year and doing this annually. And that's the one time where we're actually just looking at what we've accomplished or what we haven't. So we can make sure that we continue to prioritize what is important or shift priorities if we need to during the year.
I agree, because in my professional life, this is a weekly and monthly thing.
Yeah.
Back to goals, so that this also keeps us in touch with the budgetary constraints. So when those pet projects come up, there's a reminder that we made commitments to larger projects that need to be considered as well. So.
Yep. Thank you.
I was also just thinking that it would be great as we're going through this, as we look at our goals from 2023 to kind of note, like, do we want to totally give it up? Do we want to continue? Like things like that as we move forward, because I think there's things where we have been starting some movement on things, which are some of those are were named and those milestones, and other things are just kind of in process. So just as we're thinking about that, to not, to think about what our relationship is with those previous goals too, so that we don't kind of keep adding some while we're in process of others.
Yep. Agreed. Anyone else?
Any other thoughts or questions, feedback? I think everything that you all have mentioned is really, all of those are things that I would strongly suggest. Just like Councilmember Simmons just said, you really want to think about the relationship to the goals. It is very easy to add on and add on and add on, but then sometimes there are either, there's really good work being done that maybe isn't celebrated, and that maybe needs to be shared out more with the community. And so having that opportunity to reflect and sort of have those benchmarks is really important, because one, it's able to sort of keep everyone on the same page, department, council, community members. Also, I think, again, it mentioned understanding sort of where you all are in regards to the budget, understanding where pivots need to be made. But I think that if you were to do that, whether it's biannually or quarterly, one, I think it maybe allows, departments to sort of share out their progress, what's been going well, maybe what challenges are. It allows for time to pivot, but it also can root you all again in your values. So your values are sort of living ways to keep you all accountable for the work that you're doing. And so if you look at some of these priorities, you can say, okay, in terms of this process, have we lived out our values, or do we need to pivot so that we can make sure that we're doing this in a way, or we're making a decision that really upholds our values as a city? And so I would strongly encourage you all to think about that, because I think that it really does help kind of streamline the process as well. Again, when you're making some of these decisions going into the new year. And the other thing that I'll mention, I know I mentioned it again, but I'll mention it one more time because Councilmember Simmons mentioned it. And then I also think it's just helpful to think about. You all really, I think, came up with some very helpful language in terms of those goals for 2023 in regards to those goal areas. So retain and attract staff, community mental health, community engagement, invest in infrastructure, revenue generation, and housing. And so my goal is to help you all sort of think through, is there any way to maybe continue on these sort of, 5 areas that you all outlined? Is there one that maybe seems as if it's gotten accomplished? So, there's a new one that you can add. Do you want to just continue and have completely new areas? I've worked with organizations before where sometimes they actually end up honing in and saying the same goal areas for 2023 are the same areas for 2024, but the things that are maybe high priority in terms of maybe the tactic, or maybe something that feels more logistical in nature, or maybe the project is different, but the area of focus is still the same. And so you all can maybe choose to do something like that, or choose to do something different. But I will say that I found that for some organizations that helps with continuity, is they start to look at those areas, those bigger picture areas of focus. And then every year, what they're doing is the areas of focus, infrastructure, maybe staff retention, community engagement, those stay the same. But the way in which that's done, or the particular objective, those may change year to year. So that's just something I kind of want to throw out for you all to just softly hold as I maybe kind of share what came up when you all were filling out the goal document.
Thank you.
And I'll throw this out one more time, and then I can stop at any point. Are there any questions for departments or anything else that's coming up at the moment? Okay, so what I will share is there were several areas that sort of came up as themes. And if there is anything that is not captured in here, at some point, I'm going to give you all an opportunity to pair up and to write some things down. So if there is something that hasn't been captured here that feels like it really is a higher priority, or we don't want to make sure that it's lost going into this year, I want to make sure we have an opportunity to name that. So if it is not here, one, I apologize. And then two, I do want to make sure and know that there'll be a little bit of time to talk about these in a little bit more depth. So public safety and infrastructure, again, is one of the areas that has come up this year. And so these areas that you see in bold are where there were multiple either council members and department leads that actually shared something very similar in terms of this being a goal for 2024, or an area of focus. And so again, revitalizing the police department facilities was something that came up. Having a strategic plan to enhance worker safety, so rebuilding existing structures and addressing those environmental concerns. That was something else I believe that came up in some of the department share outs at our last conversation. Pave the Frog Island parking lot. Identify a plan and funding to replace Prospect Park Playground. Update software to better meet the needs of public and employees. And then some other high areas that came up from multiple people were investing in city-owned facilities and infrastructure with capital improvements that provide safe and updated spaces for staff and residents. And so again, facilities was a big thing, particularly the police department, thinking about creating some sort of plan for funding around Prospect Park Playground, Frog Island parking lot, but really creating a capital plan sort of around, these places so that they can be safe and of highest quality for community members and staff. Some other things that came up were police department enhancements, so prioritizing recruitment and training and community relations, which is also, I know, something that came up last year, was thinking about community mental health and how does the city sort of support community mental health needs. And then again, funding those capital improvement projects, ensuring that the facilities used by the government are functional and safe, creating a comprehensive plan to sort of address dilapidated buildings and attach a budget to that, creating again a budget line item one-on-one to address needed maintenance throughout the year, and then integrating all financial, treasury, HR, building, and community development software, and then improve the interior and exterior appearance of the police department. So as you can see, I think there's maybe a good 3 or 4 things that keep coming up that maybe fall under the umbrella of improvement specifically for the police department, creating, you know, a fund plan around the capital, around the city improvement projects, thinking about integration of software in terms of, you know, all of the departments and finding ways to integrate that more, and then also that community relations. So those are sort of the key areas that have come up right now in terms of public safety and infrastructure.
Can I interject really quickly?
Yes.
Just want to clarify, when we're talking about facilities, I do know that I saw things about the police department, but are we also talking about DPS? Because I think DPS is our number one priority right now, or is that coming up somewhere else? Am I getting ahead of you?
Yes, DPS was the number one thing that came up. So sorry.
Yeah,
That's our
Yes.
public services.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Okay. I was doing the same
Yes.
thing. I was like, I think
All right.
DPS.
Thank you.
That was my mistake. Yes.
Okay.
So that was the number one thing that came up though. As you see here, it was the public safety facilities. And then I'll maybe stop here. Are there any questions that the council maybe has for staff at this point? Or is there anything that department leads want to share that would be helpful context for sort of this portion of talking about public safety and infrastructure?
They can.
Oh,
Go ahead.
I didn't know which hand went up first, so Mayor Pro Tem Mayor Pro Tem.
I just have a question about the strategic plan for the worker safety. So this has already been started, and my understanding was it already had been started, and where are we on that progress? With that, I agree this is like top priority here, but do we have movement on that, or?
I was gonna say, I asked Bonnie about that last week, and I think we were supposed to get something about it, but city manager. You can.
Yeah, I was just going to explain that the safety committee has started meeting to begin to create this plan. We all have our objectives to complete before the next meeting. Our emergency plan has already been developed through the fire department, so that's being trainings and drills are going to be coming in the future for those.
Thank you.
And the union is involved in the
Yes.
safety committee, and yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah. Prospect Park. So I think this was scheduled for last year, and we put in a grant proposal we didn't get. Did we submit twice for that? Okay. Are those grants annual? We can reapply? Okay.
And what I may,
Sorry, Councilmember Sweet?
Bonnie, could I ask you while we're talking about that part to, just so everyone has an understanding, to elaborate on the, I'm gonna say it wrong, archaeological study needs at that location that affect grant funding?
For Prospect Park? Archaeological?
Archaeological.
So as everybody is well aware, Prospect Park, once upon a time, the late 1800s, was a cemetery. As such, whenever we receive federal money, we have, well, separate column, I'm sorry. Whenever we receive federal money, we have to go through what's called a Section 106 review, which pays attention to such things as the soundscape, the viewscape, and the historical landscape. And one thing that we have not done with Prospect Park, which has been a barrier to us spending federal funds in that space, has been to get a thorough archaeological study. And so CDBG funds, which we've used frequently for our playgrounds in the past, are federal funds. And so in order to really pursue some of our more standard funding sources for the playground, we need to complete an archaeological study first.
And so we're in the process of,
We have not yet begun that.
And what would that process be and what kind of cost comes along with that?
I do not have a good dimension of the cost, but it would start with an RFP. I know that in the past, the archaeological sorts of studies for my roads projects have cost, around the realm of $5,000. Since this actually has some meat on it, I would expect north of that, but
Mhm. Thank you.
Thanks for that context.
yeah. Thank
I didn't know that.
you. Either.
Wow.
Didn't know it was a cemetery in 18.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other questions before we give it back to Sharonda? Sharonda, you can keep going.
Perfect. What I might actually have you all do is some people may already be starting to kind of think about what they want to rank. You all should have that sheet that sort of has, it's like the prioritization sheet. If we want to do it this way, it's okay if it's not finished, per slide that I go through, but I might encourage you all actually to start taking some notes. And you can do that. There's like a 1 through 5 for each section. And so if there's some notes that you want to take, or you feel like you've got a couple items that under sort of the guise of public safety and infrastructure are coming up for you, I'd encourage you all to actually take a moment and maybe just write those too while it's fresh in your memory in terms of being able to ask questions like Bonnie was just able to share. And so maybe we'll just take a minute to have people start with that. And then again, we'll go back to this sheet as a whole once I finish again, sort of just sharing what came up. Does that work for council? So I'll throw that out as a question.
Yes, I would love to do this while it's fresh in my brain.
Okay, that's perfect. I know myself and I'll forget. And so I think it's good while it's fresh to just take a moment to reflect. So we'll just take a moment, a minute or so of silence, and then I'll have you all sort of just from what has been shared, write down what you feel like maybe are some higher priority items. So you can sort of rank under, again, public safety and infrastructure. And there should be enough room there if there's a bigger question that's coming up that you think might be helpful that the council will have to go back to, then feel free to put that on the sheet as well. And it looks like people are still writing, so we'll just take one more minute and then we'll go on to sort of the next area that came up. Okay, do people need another moment, or would you like me to continue?
Any more time?
No, I think a lot of these are
They're similar.
similar and can be encapsulated in.
Yeah, I put little next to them. Okay. Yep, you can keep going.
Okay, perfect. And I appreciate that. So yes, there's sort of some synergy with some of these. So if they can be encapsulated, or if it seems like one is maybe a bigger picture umbrella and there are a few under that, feel free to make sure that you capture that as well. And so economic development and operations was another sort of secondary theme area that came up. And so again, some of what you see in bold were the areas that seemed like there was consensus or that came up multiple times in all of the documents that you all had a chance to create. So investing in city-owned facilities, we talked about Frog Island and Prospect Park. So I think this came up. I think that actually was supposed to be in our first one, but competent team for City Hall. So underlying city goals is imperative to hiring professionals, including a city manager, economic development planning, and economic/planning department head. So hiring was a big one that came up. Develop Water Street property to reflect the Ypsilanti values. Affordable housing and community development. So that came up again, which I know was something that came up last year. So ongoing youth mini grants, Park Ridge Community Center improvement, and vibrant events. And so again, this theme of community engagement, community events, finding ways to reach out to individuals across ages and demographics. Reopening park bathrooms, and then community-focused initiatives, exploring partnerships for sustainable solutions. So sort of the themes that came up from last year that are also showing up here are thinking about sort of repairing of those public spaces. So Frog Island, Prospect Park, reopening bathrooms, also thinking about making sure that all of these key positions are staffed, and then that affordable housing and community development. So creating partnerships that might also help with more sustainable solutions around housing and community engagement. And so I will stop there. Are there any questions for departments or context that council members or department leads want to add in terms of any of these areas? I think that the questions, the context, all of those are helpful as we talk about some of the goals.
Councilmember Simmons.
This is just more of a timeline question. In terms of thinking about Water Street, when will we have the presentation from AKT or from Carlisle Wortman or with AKT Peerless and such about where we are with that?
I believe that's in March, correct, Katie? Yeah, March.
Are there questions about this area? Are these, Sharonda, when I look at the presentation that we have and then the ranking form, they seem to be split up in different sections on the form. And so should we be looking at both of those areas when we're ranking them right now? Because they're not going to come up again. It doesn't look like in the presentation. that you-
Yep, you can look at both of those areas. And if I need to go back to something, or it seems as if something wasn't captured, we can also talk about that. And that can also be put in your rankings as well. So just because it's not necessarily captured on the slide deck, I want to make sure that people don't feel like we're married to the fact that it, obviously can't be put as a goal.
Thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did.
I have to say, I'm a little confused in going back and forth between the slides
Yeah.
and the sheet because they're not congruent.
We're at economic development operations. I think there's. on
Some of the
slides,
same,
we don't
but
have community outreach and engagement in here. They're all under one heading, I think, is what it looks like.
Hmm.
Like the affordable housing on our sheet is under community outreach and engagement, but on here it's under the economic development
got it.
portion. So
Okay.
everything's
So then
in-
that was,
yeah, in one section.
I see.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
okay. My
Yeah, we're
apologies for
pulling
that.
from-
All right. I think, yeah, after develop Water Street, that was supposed to be a different, right underneath, everything else under there is in the next section. Mhm.
And I'll give people a moment if you need to make a note on your form. And would people like me to share? I know you all have it on your sheet, but sort of the areas that came up for community outreach and engagement.
Yes, please, you can share those.
Okay, the big one that came up that wasn't shown on the slide, like we talked about affordable housing, and so the ongoing youth grants, the Park Ridge Community Center improvement, the vibrant events. We talked about reopening the park bathrooms and having a community-focused initiative, sort of again exploring those partnerships. The big thing that came up was improved communication with public. So that came up several times in regards to sort of community outreach and engagement. So creating a comprehensive communication plan for internal and external communication, and then finding ways to engage communications, and to sort of analyze current efforts, and then finding ways to create improvements. And so really, again, coming up with a communication plan, but also taking a step back and sort of realizing what do we currently have in terms of our community outreach and communication, and then what are the things that are working well and what are the areas of improvement. And then what has come up, I think, multiple times, even in terms of sort of the vision for the city of Ypsi, is really attracting more people to the city, but especially thinking about events and local businesses. So that overarching communication with the public and perhaps thinking about a communication plan was sort of a big thing that came up in relation to community outreach and engagement.
Thank you.
And I'll maybe stop there again. And then are there any questions or context that department leads or council members want to add as people, as we take a moment and people sort of rank or think about sort of this area of community relations and engagement?
One of the things that I added individually as I ranked that section is we've talked about a comprehensive communication plan before, and of course, improve our communication with the public and external. But I specifically noted strengthening our internal communication and relationships. I think that that is of utmost importance for us to be able to work cohesively going forward. And I think that's been one of my goals every year since I've been on council, to be honest. So that's almost a decade that we, work together to communicate amongst ourselves and amongst our departments and our colleagues to make sure that we all have an understanding of the shared vision and the goals and how do we get there. So I'm going to keep putting that forward because I think it's very important.
Can I ask a question about the Park Ridge Community Center improvement? What's the extent of that project?
I wasn't necessarily aware of a Park Ridge Community Center improvement. I know they redid the floors and they had some HVAC installed, but I'm not entirely sure what that is referencing.
I don't think there's anything in process that we're involved in terms of additional improvements. I'm going to make the assumption that maybe continuing to support them is what this meant, maybe. I know that you attend those meetings.
But I think, Councilman Tucson, I think you had that on your goals, but I do know that Park Ridge wants to expand.
Yeah, yes, they
Okay.
want to, but I was saying there's no plan in place at this moment. Yeah. Okay.
I'll give people a minute to think about that particular area. And one thing that I'll reiterate is, again, I think something that came up last year, I think what came up also this year was that idea of cohesiveness and collaboration, thinking about that externally, but also internally as well. I think that, we did sort of that smaller activity around the values and what those look like in action. An idea might be, is there a way for that to sort of be a trickle down effect? So for instance, is that a way for departments to do that with their team members? Is there a way to, have a check-in and have those values be explicit, or for, departments to share that out? So what are the ways where there can be synergy in terms of the activities or the conversations that are being had? What are the ways that you all can check in with one another? I think all of that, again, going back to maybe those, quarterly conversations, or, when department leads are sharing out sort of their bigger picture areas of focuses or challenges, maybe having that happen and then having council members, create the goals. And so I think there are some different things that maybe either around timing or streamlining opportunities for people to come together, I think can fit under sort of that desire for that increased communication and cohesiveness internally as well as externally.
You saying that reminded me of something actually, Sharonda. In those of you who use social media, your memories pop up. And one of the memories that popped up for me, and I think it was either last week or this week, from some years ago, is a council retreat that we did that was like an off piece from after we completed the goals and we went over to the senior center. You remember that, Andrew? And we all talked about beyond like our actual, like the tangible goals, but just our shared goals and ideas and what we want to see amongst ourselves. And I think that could be, although I know we've had like tons of special meetings, but another time that maybe we could meet to just do that specifically. That's not attached to budgetary items, but really just about our functionality as a group and core understanding of process. So like a refresher, Mr. Barrios, a refresher on like Robert's rules and all these different things to just refresh everyone and prepare them for the year ahead. And so I would love to see us do that, even though that would require us to add another meeting. So just putting that out there. Councilmember Simmons.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just saying, because as I'm going through these, like there's a couple of things where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to talk about this particular thing, but I don't know that this is necessarily the moment for it. So I'm kind of holding some of that, but just to also say that as I'm going through here, I am pulling things from our goals from last year too into this prioritization chart here, and also pulling in things where I noticed some things that might have maybe been named differently, but like thinking about the spirit of some of the things that I saw too in our different goals. And so pulling some of those things together, like for instance, like I saw a couple of mentions around neighborhood specific things, which I actually think really gets at communication, because the city can put out whatever we want, but people mostly listen to their neighbors. So so thinking about ways that we can support that, and then also different things that we've talked around. So like thinking about like some of the fun things like the staff outings we talked about, or field day or something like that. So just like naming that, there's some things where I think it might have been like named a little bit differently, but was actually mentioned across some of them that I'm trying to pull in. So I would definitely love to be able to talk a little bit more about some of those things more, to get a little bit more of the flavor and what it might really look like.
Thank you for mentioning that too, because I think that, whether it's a retreat or, you all continue these conversations, I think it also allows you all to refine your language and have shared language. And obviously, there will be different nuances, but if you can pull the spirit of it, or the more, again, defining, your values, defining, like you all did last year, some of those overarching areas, when there's shared language, it is easier to sort of pull those things apart. But I appreciate you doing that. And so I'd encourage other people to do the same, because really, I do think that there's some synergy in terms of what are some of the things that people have put here. And so, if it is okay with everyone, I'll just quickly share in terms of some of the policy and process aspect of it, addressing charter language and zoning ordinances. That was something that came up multiple times. So, having initiatives to clarify the city charter and restructuring zoning, ensuring streamlined governance and optimized land use. And then strengthening council and staff relations, which again, I think that's come up even with communication. And so that team retreat that underscores the importance of collaboration for effective governance. And so that was something that also came up. But the big piece was, again, thinking about maybe initiatives to kind of get clarity around the city charter and the restructure zoning that came up in terms of policy and process. So I'll maybe open it up for questions or context that would be helpful for others.
More comments on this settlement?
Just one quick thing, just as we're talking about like zoning and things, it also just makes me think about just our general, like our codes in general, and like enforcement and things like that, which I feel like I've been talking to many people about this past week. And so I wonder about, this will come up later, but just in terms of process, or just thinking, like I think how we did, whether it's through work groups or something like that, I don't know. Like I don't know what will be the best way to really look through our codes, right? I think when the encampment issue came up and we were trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? And City Manager Halinga sent like I hear the two like the code areas that would relate to what we're looking at. And of course I was looking at it, and as I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, there's all kinds of things in here that seem funky or like, you know, it's like, don't ride a bike through the park. But I'm like, but we're having like this is what they're for, and like the B2B like trail. So anyway, so it just was making me think like, how would we do that more systematically, you know, in terms of is it just kind of work groups to kind of go through different sections or selections, or like as things come up, whether we say, hey, can we look at this and think what would make more sense now, what things need to be shifted or changed. And so anyway, I don't really know, but that's something I was just noticing and wanting to talk about. And also being able to, for something like that, like be able to have the staff that do that work too, be able to be a part of that conversation.
Part of that, in terms of the zoning, I mean, you were talking about the code, the other ordinances. But in terms of zoning, in the recent meetings, with the planning commission, there's the acknowledgement that the zoning code is all over the place, and that needs to be refined. And there's lots of very specific things that need to be done, but the conversations that have come up have invigorated that commission to take that on. And everything that came up, it was like, we're looking at a major overhaul with the zoning code. So that's one thing. I like the idea of you know, going through chapter by chapter and looking at the ordinances and see where those need to be. And staff have been doing those in the past. We've had the text amendments to make sure that things are congruent through the many changes that this has been through. But perhaps, you know, as staff does that, we have a more of a conversation than just having the text amendments sent to us.
I was gonna add too, I think it is a good way to engage our advisory bodies too, the ones that apply to them, for them to look at code and ordinances and then present that to us, and then we can do a deeper dive if we need to in terms of the recommendations they give us. I think it'd be a good use of time to have them support us. That's what we have those folks for, to help us figure out what we need to change or the same, you know. That's a great idea. Anything else on this section?
So what came up next was thinking about organizational sustainability. So the software, I think, has come up in different areas. Modernization. So I'm thinking about ways to sort of find ways to have systems or software that's going to enhance public interaction. And then also organizational assessment. So ensuring stability by establishing non-union salary scales, assessing city services, and aligning with regional employee standards. And so again, I heard that even come up earlier. So sort of thinking about, you know, sort of succession planning, thinking about what is going to allow staff to stay here, what's going to continue to attract talent here, thinking about, you know, having, you know, modern software and systems, how that will help not just the public, but also it will help sort of staff in terms of their ability to do their job, are really the big things I think that have kind of come up under this area. And so I'll open it up for maybe context or other things if people have them or questions.
One question, just like, just for clarification, this modernized systems for enhanced public interaction. What was that related to specifically? Is that the BS? That was more, is that?
It's part of it. It's to make it a little bit easier to do things virtually rather than having to come in. A lot of our payment options are only for specific things, so it's making them universal, making things more more easily reached, and just kind of facilitate a more efficient system for city operations. And those also could be different softwares that improve function internally as well as externally.
This is more than just the ERP, the BSNA. So there's comprehensive.
There's other software that are not as expensive, but they'll help a department function better. in itself. So it's looking at different options in order for departments to be at their best, especially since our staff levels are where they are. So anything that we can do to make ourselves more efficient is going to be very useful.
Thank you.
And so I will give people a moment to just sort of what's come up either in this area or again, I think there's themes from all of what we shared so far. I'll give people a moment to think about either ranking these, but also if there are bigger picture sort of questions or next step suggestions that are also coming up for people to capture that as well.
I have more of a process question, I guess, in terms of in the areas that we're seeing duplication, like in terms I see comprehensive communication plan in this area, as well as I think in a previous one, the community engagement, I want to say. When we synthesize these in terms of ranking our goals overall, because I'm assuming we won't have, like if we have 3 or 4 in each section, we'll have 12 goals, we may have 5 major goals. And again, these are random numbers, but how will these be, how will you include them in the final presentation of like how we ranked our goals? I guess there are multiple sections.
So I think what we'll do if there's multiple section is what I'll do is what I'll have you do next after the last slide is I want you all to sort of rank what you feel like are your overarching priority areas. And then I'm going to have you partner with someone else and sort of go through this document and see where the consensus is. But what I'll do is like what I hear coming up is in terms of communication, there needs to be maybe some assessment of external communication and internal communication. So what I'll do in the document is I'll just differentiate between the two. And so I'll make them two separate things, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the organizational assessment and wondering if there's a consultant involved in that, if that's in-house through regular staff meetings with department heads, or how does that, what's the
Organizational review, I'm not entirely sure whose goal that was. But yeah, we discuss these things at department heads, but ultimately, if this is something council wants to move forward with to do a contracted review, that would be something that we could do. We did the salary study in 2021, but in terms of operations, that hasn't been reviewed.
No.
And I'll give people just a moment to at least finish their ranking in terms of what we talked about so far. And then I'll share this again, but just as like administrative sort of next step thing for people to hold, what I will do is I will share this and then I'll also share it again with Andrew. And so we'll go over this. And then also what I'll do is if there are any additions or language that could be more helpful for you all, then I'll allow people to have a look at it. And then if you have any, additions or thoughts, what I'll do is I'll maybe take, 3 or 4 days, if, depending on how long it takes for people to look at it, and then I'll send it back. So a lot of times what I'll do is sometimes depending on the project, I'll have someone, I'll have sort of the key, staff people or point people look at the document, And if they think it would be helpful to, shift the flow or add anything else for, external parties that are looking at it, or, for other council members that are looking at it, then I can always make, tweaks to that and then resend it. And so basically what you're getting is a almost finalized draft. And then if you feel good about it, great. And then also if you go, okay, there are some other things, or this language could help us if, we're not going to look at it again till 3 or 4 months, so we can go back and remember, then I can make sure that it's organized in a way that you all can look at and feel good about. So I also hope that answers your question too, Mayor, in terms of thinking about how it would be outlined. So the other area was thinking about sort of finances and partnerships. So growing partnerships is something, again, that has come up multiple times. I think growing partnerships in relation to community partnerships, but also thinking about finances and thinking about how to foster collaboration in terms of just, what are ways where that could be fiscally beneficial. That came up multiple times. And then developing a long-term fiscal plans and administer these using best practices. I think this may have also been thinking about that among different departments. And then those long-term financial plans. So the finances department, their commitment to diverse revenue streams and purposeful spending. So thinking about what are ways to have multiple revenue streams, what are ways for, I think, across different departments to think about those long-term financial plans and best practices are some of the big things that came up. And then I'll ask if there is any either staff members or council members that want to add any context to this. We can do that at this moment as well.
Councilmember Simmons?
Yeah, just I'm just looking for instance, just to kind of have a sense of when thinking about like collaborations for mutual community benefits for finance, like what are some of the things that we might be considering, or what kinds of collaborations?
Again, not sure whose role that was, but in terms of regional cooperation, we currently work, there's the police departments, mutual aid agreements, but better work with our surrounding jurisdictions. Potentially the township has approached the city about doing a corridor improvement plan and just working with other communities around us and work together just to solve regional problems. Building those coalitions in order to address a lot of what is going to be coming. You're looking at sustainability, anything. It's going to be something that has to be approached regionally. So to foster those relationships would be very useful.
Thank you for that context. So what I'd like to do before I have you all sort of break into pairs, I'd like you to think about all of the things that we have heard thus far. And then I want you to think about if you could maybe rank sort of these like bigger pictures. So think sort of bigger picture, sort of 1 to 5, what might be sort of 5 areas that really need focus. And then I'd like you to think about, are there maybe, 3 areas or 4 areas that also need sort of a budget allocation to them? Because I know that this is sort of interconnected with the goals, and I'd like you to make a star by those. So if you can think about what are maybe your top sort of 5 big picture areas of concentration for 2024, and then are there some key areas, and I'd like for both of these to cap it sort of at 5, are there some key areas that need budget sort of attention and allocation? And for those, I'd like you to put a star by those. So again, rank those maybe overarching big picture areas. Then I'd like you to make a note of those areas that maybe need to either have a line item or there needs to be some continued sort of intentionality around the budget for them. And you may find that there are some ongoing items. I'd like you to maybe just make a circle or some sort of note for some of these ongoing items that maybe have been started last year that maybe still need to be a part of the goal setting process or still need to be considered. So first you're going to rank sort of those 5 overarching areas. Then I want you to, make a star or a mark for areas that maybe need some budget consideration. And then I'd like you to maybe circle some of those areas that are ongoing or sort of a continuation between 2023 and 2024 if they haven't already been reflected in the 2 previous prompts. And then I'd like you all to sort of do like a hand wave or indication verbally once you have gotten started or you feel like you're close to feeling like you've completed your list. And then will ask that council if you can partner up with another council member and if you all could talk about what you have written and then see if there's some consensus. So I'll give you a moment to do that on your own, and then I will ask you all to pair up to see if you can come to a consensus in terms of the items that you all have captured that are your high priority.
Steve, do you want to be Sony? You want to be Rome's partner? Can you be mine? Or do you want to be? Switch. Switch.
Hey.
Hi.
And I'm going to give you, I'll check in about 5 minutes, but let's take several minutes to really see if you and your partner can sort of flesh some of these out. I see people have already started moving around.
Yep.
I'm in process.
That's okay. If you need another moment too on your own, that is totally fine.
Struggling without.
Yeah, but I think we have a lot of priorities.
Mhm.
Safety. And while we're doing that.
Mhm.
Paying attention.
Yeah.
For me to go through the-
Mhm.
And then I didn't get to the others.
So I'm gonna put this down there. It's not on there, but and it doesn't really take a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's no budgetary part to it. So what we're supposed to start if it has a budget, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I started once, I started here, and like all the sites.
All of them.
And again, what I will add is if there's something that's not quite reflected on there, and as you're coming up in conversation, it feels like it still needs to be captured, then please feel free to put that as well.
Yeah. So one I down, one I check.
Yeah.
As.
All right.
But I think
I see.
that's good.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, just because it's.
Kind of, yeah. Oh, there was some.
And that goes with the organization assessments.
I feel like honestly, I think writing down our sheets of all the all the time.
You don't.
Then it gets lost.
That's
So-
why I named it on my.
Yeah. Every year.
Keep it up there.
And I.
It doesn't say maintenance by anybody here.
Then I have this, I'm not sure what to call it yet. I don't know. And
Mhm.
and then, you know, get them doing.
Somewhere we had it, it was Braga, part of facility.
So I put facilities infrastructure like that, you know, all the things that have to do with like the spaces that we own and operate.
Mhm.
I feel like
No, I already-
it's not
It's hard to
any-
write them down,
Mhm.
you know, like individually 5 things. So I put BPS as its own facilities and infrastructure.
That is, you know, right. You have to have that.
Which would include everything from here
Everything.
in 5
All
things.
these-
There you go.
Like Russ, we're gonna get back to.
Exactly.
2.
Mhm.
But in my mind, that's my overarching, like facilities, infrastructure, land that we own, things that we own.
I'm confused at How, why, especially what you did after.
Facilities,
and
capital improvement plan.
Capital improvement plan, it's like, well,
That's
that's
what that includes.
what it's all about.
Yeah. Maybe I should just put CIP next to this instead.
There you go.
CIP. There we go.
Let's just put everything under one and then leave it that way.
There. And that's it. And then I don't know, another one. And then conceptual, because I didn't think about that on any of these things, if it's a pull through, like pull forward.
Mhm.
No. I think just because communication there.
Oh, I didn't write it down. I said,
Think
I
about
didn't write
Right.
it down.
Like the, you know,
So, you know.
different.
The different one thing.
No, I'm just.
Unless this helps out.
Oh.
Oh.
Can I-
Yeah.
I'm really confused. What is it? Okay, that- what was that? An operation.
Yeah, but I was,
Well, we do have a lot of overlap. I didn't have.
I thought you were talking about all the.
Make it clear. Where does this?
We're close, you know, driving distance. Okay.
And as people are talking, I also pull up those 2023 goal areas again, just because there may be again some overlap, or you may find that you and your partner have the idea to maybe sort of synthesize when you're coming together and kind of finding your, priority, your top sort of like 5 or so priority items that maybe they fall under some of these buckets. So again, last year you all really had these goals of retain and attract staff, community mental health, community engagement, investing in infrastructure, and then revenue generation and housing. And so those were some of the big areas that came up from last year. So it may be that how it was presented when we were just talking feels like it's more applicable, or there may be some merger of how you all sort of outlined your goals for 2023. But I just wanted to remind people.
But yeah, I wonder if there's different ways of like ordering things, so like combine or. Yeah.
You know, I think some of the things that looking on the board necessarily budget. But it would take time. For sure. How would you like to see? Just add, I'm just adding.
Right, I took. Mhm. I'm so caught up.
Oh. Or whoever's gonna talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna just have. You think about trying to communicate.
I'm sure. I think you enlightened a lot of people with that. That was new communication.
And so let me just check in with council. How is it going with your partners? Do people need a few more minutes? After this, I'll ask for each group to share out as well.
I think we need a few more minutes.
Perfect. Okay, so I will check in just a few minutes.
I know. I don't think. What do you put?
Yeah, we showed it to me, Mark.
All right, I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
But I mean, I think maybe it does go without saying. Maybe we should ask our colleagues.
So, what are we supposed to do? What are we? We're like, okay, do we number it? Like,
So,
we kind of.
We've just been talking about ours and writing them down and adding more if we need to, because I don't think five is good enough.
Okay, yeah. Like my other.
Find a bunch of stuff.
We can combine things.
Okay, so that's what we'll talk about, right?
Yeah,
And
breaking
then
them
we'll,
down and then
'cause I feel like it'll be, okay. I just feel like it's not gonna be enough, like.
No, and one of the things that I said in the first one that I wanna, kind of thought she would share. We do is we can kind of step back. This is what we can do, but God, this is how it's gonna cost it. Do it then.
Yeah, that's because I know that there's another part of
There's
the
another
process.
part of
This is kind of just like,
Yeah. We have.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yep, okay, sounds good.
We're all on the same page.
Okay.
So let's take about another minute and a half in our pairs, and then I'd like for each group to share out because I think we can spend this last portion of our time having some discussion. And then what I'll do is I'll also be taking some notes. And again, this is not necessarily the final vote of the goals. This is really to start honing in on some consensus. And then I will send a very brief document to kind of recapture what came out in this conversation to share out to you all. And then if that needs to be edited or updated, I'll send that back out once you all have a chance to look at it. But you all will have another opportunity, from what I believe last year, to sort of make a finalized vote on these goals. So this is not the final conversation, but this is our final session in terms of trying to come up with a consensus. So I hope for people who are listening and also for the council, just want to throw that out as the reminder.
Yeah, I just want to add, I guess, maybe for some clarity. So typically in this session, we would be ranking them and then we would get back a compiled list that we would vote on at the next meeting. Are we saying that we are going to have another step in between that and voting on our finalized goals because of where we are now in this process?
The goals have to be approved by the first meeting in February, so this would be.
Oh, this is it. All right. Okay.
The way I kind of see this is we create these umbrellas of goals, and then we can approve the goals, but then we can have another work session to understand what type of what action items would fall under those goals that we should focus most on to achieve those goals in the next fiscal year, and then we can attach funds to them and bring that to budget.
To budget. Okay. Thank you. This one doesn't have any money attached, so that's good. No money. Wait, you had the. I was just thinking mostly in terms of some of this costs money. Making money. If you have this one. I don't know. Cause I have.
Well, this is operation.
It's kind of like having a streamlining process, making it easier for community members like that.
Just like, we'll just say like, grouped a little different. But a lot of
Okay.
When you make the A and the D go together, yeah.
Listen, my handwriting looks cursive all the time. All the time. These days.
So I'll maybe ask for any group can go first, but maybe share a high overview of your conversation. And then if you, from your conversation, there was consensus in terms of, like Andrew said, maybe those other, those sort of bigger umbrella goals. And then if there is anything you want to add, like this is what we think is a suggested next step to do that.
Anybody want to go first or you want? All right.
You start. So our conversation was, there was a lot of crossover and similarity in things that we discussed. So some overarching themes here. Number one, infrastructure investment and CIP project enhancement. So this is including, right, we're talking about DPS, park related projects, city owned facility enhancements, etc. Number two, umbrella item, operations and staffing efficiencies. So talking about the software program enhancements, hiring and retentions, organizational assessment as well. Number three, communication and engagement with a big focus on a communication plan, both internal and external. Number four, community development and projects. So talking about their Water Street, Frog Island parking lot, any other large scope and scale development and enhancement projects.
Yeah.
That was our list.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Sure, why not?
Oh, no. All right. Ours looks pretty similar. Yeah, for Tim, go ahead.
We had them grouped a little differently, but I like the way you grouped them. So that's right.
Your
So,
group.
our highest priority was the capital improvement, including DPS facilities, other facilities, infrastructure at Frog Island. The operations in terms of staffing assessment and organizational assessment, internal communications, streamlining processes, and then the software upgrade was all under that. We struggled with, well, not struggled, but questioned Water Street and Penn Dam because those kind of go without saying. It's just like those need to get attention and they have to be mentioned, but at the same time. So, and then in terms of looking at partnerships and revenue streams. Every time we get into the budget, we're like, we have the limited things that we have, but we need to find ways to work with other partners throughout the county and the region to really take advantage of commonalities.
All right. Yeah, so some of these like categories, yeah, they're not necessarily great categories, but some of the different ways to think of it. I mean, some of them are fine. Yeah, but we kind of try to combine some of these and yeah, it's not all very official. So yeah, one, the capital improvement plan, DPS site, and study of other spaces. We have communications, relationship building, and community engagement, which included things like work at the neighborhood level, general community communications, internal communications, looking at our staff position, and thinking about position role changes and some of the different fun things that we've talked about, both with the community as well as with staff. And then another area was like around public spaces. And so within that, we talked about bathrooms or porta potties, the Frog Island parking lot, Prospect Park. And then the next one, recruit, attract, retain staff, and included within that is thinking about the software improvements and other job enhancement resources. And then the next one is kind of a catch-all, and I put quality of life. And that includes housing and rental study, support for unhoused community, non-emergency response, traffic calming, and pedestrian and cycling safety, as well as the mini grants and barrier busters. And within thinking about some of the quality of life pieces, that would also include looking at our ordinances and enforcement.
Everybody.
And so I will open it up back to you all in terms of, I feel like there were some very clear things that came up, but I'd just like to acknowledge what came up as other groups were sharing out, or even as they talked about some of these bigger picture goals. And then, what are you noticing? Again, what seems to be highest priority from what you heard other people share? Or is there a way, even because we're talking about sort of shared language, a way to sort of maybe even refine some of the language of these bigger picture areas?
I mean, I think capital improvements are kind of top of mind for everyone, which includes specifically the DPS facility, but as well as some of our other city-owned spaces, whether that be our other buildings, whether that be our parks, the parking lot. All of these things to me were a thread across this all that was a priority. So capital improvements.
In terms, naming the highest priority. I think, communications and engagement, both internally and externally. I think there's a focus there.
Certainly a focus on staffing, and you can include a lot of things in that, from hiring city manager and director for economic development and planning to other staff positions that are open, building department, getting those getting a staff, but then also looking at the assessments, and what we need to do to retain folks and get them decent salaries and benefits. And that also goes with the internal communications as well. So.
And then community development, of course, with a emphasis on, you know, what we all know, like Water Street and Penn Dam, and how we utilize, you know, our spaces. I think community development also includes what your groups talked about, to me, around the focus on pedestrian and cyclist safety and all of these, you know, different things, because it requires us to look at our like physical infrastructure.
Mhm.
And are there other things that are coming up, or I know that you all will later maybe sort of finalize the budget aspect of this, but are there things that maybe seem like even in terms of fiscally maybe need to be prioritized?
Did you say what needs to fiscally be prioritized?
Were there any of these that seemed like it would be important to keep in mind also in relation to not just goals, but you know, there might be, we've got to think about this in terms of sort of you know, yeah, how we're allocating the budget or making it a line item. I know that even last year and this year that, you know, sometimes is a conversation that they're kind of intertwined, is thinking about the goals, but also thinking about what maybe needs to be amplified because there's got to be, you know, maybe a dollar amount attached.
I kind of felt like there was possible, like varying depending on some of the processes or like the steps, like maybe
Mhm.
one stage may not need it, but like by the time we get to it, we might need it. So
Mhm.
I kind of know that there's going to be some budgetary pieces, although some of them are smaller.
Gotcha.
I think all of these have a budget,
Yeah,
as
they do.
Councilmember Simmons was saying. I think at budget time and understanding what action items that we want to move forward with within these umbrellas, that's when we'll better understand how we want to use our resources to effectively and efficiently address these problems.
Yes.
And so maybe I will pull up a few questions and we won't maybe address all of those. But I am wondering, maybe are there any things that seem like there are there any questions that are coming up, or maybe what seems like maybe the most critical or next step? And then another question is sort of what are areas, um, what might be a helpful focus to sort of sustain what you have already done? So I'm wondering, are there things that seem like a sort of critical next step? Are there any key questions that are coming up from what was just shared? And then, you know, what could be helpful for you all to continue to sustain the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think a critical next step would be the kind of retreat or that meeting where we can kind of get more, like understand more of like the steps and like what we actually like have in our head that's outside of the kind of quick words. And
Mhm.
and yeah, so just kind of getting a little bit more clarity around that and seeing where there's some not so much overlap, but where things might be able to connect in ways that could actually lead to more efficiency in some different areas and things like that.
Thank you for that.
Then in concert with that meeting, if council has any information that they want research prior, so we can bring that to the table in order to have a, you know, a more enhanced conversation, that would be useful.
Councilmember Sweet.
And along with kind of next steps, going with some of the goals and themes. Sounds like there's already a plan in progress to present hopefully this year on kind of facility needs and kind of a plan to tackle some of those step by step, et cetera. Long-term plan. Okay.
Is there anything else coming up? And so as a reminder of these next steps, what I may ask is maybe I'll to have these maybe I might want to collect some of these goals. Just I've got them written down, but Andrew, if you and I can coordinate a way for me to just make sure that the notes are captured. So if you all, don't throw away or hold on to your papers, I might ask Andrew to collect those to make sure that I capture everything that you all have. But then this will be sent as sort of like a quick one-page document that'll be sent back to you all. And then Andrew already talked about sort of the voting process and some of the things that will happen next. So that'll sort of be our next step, is that this will be synthesized. And it seems like you all may want another time to gather to sort of kind of flush out either where is maybe the overlap or how some of these things can be streamlined. There might be some research that happens on staffing and or some sort of back end work to give you all the context that you need, even thinking about, making decisions with the budget. But that'll sort of be the next steps. Andrew, is there anything else that you want to add?
No, just if council wants to put their name on their sheet and then provide it to me, I'll just scan it and send it to Sharana tomorrow.
Perfect.
Not sure this is gonna make any more sense.
No, I don't know. You're gonna read this and be like, what? Okay, the last sheet or the whole thing? One prioritize.
What do you think would be easiest for me to understand? If it's the last sheet, where you just have your 5 goals, perfect.
I have like 7 goals.
Okay.
That's okay. You can have 7.
Want the last sheet or the whole thing?
Sure. I think if we did overall priorities, the last sheet, or honestly,
I will rewrite this. on the
Yeah,
back
I'll get you.
so
I'll
that
get you a
it's-
clean sheet before then.
Don't, deal with
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So our final
rewrite it.
overall priorities.
Yes.
Listen,
Overall priorities. Hopefully where we can, my handwriting is terrible. So I always like to ask on behalf of other people with not great handwriting, if it
type
can
those up to
be,
you in an email. Yep. I'll send it an email.
or if they're scanned, and then just written, that's fine. I can decipher, but I just, when I write, if I know that I need to be legible, I put in that effort to be legible. If it's just for my own eyes, it's not necessarily the same luxury.
So either or, I'll probably just type mine because my handwriting is not.
And it's just the overall
Overall.
prize.
Yes, just the overall.
When do you want those?
If you could get them to me by Friday, that would be helpful.
Oh, okay.
Today's Tuesday. Okay.
You gonna get them tonight?
If you can get them earlier, perfect, but Friday at the lead.
Okay.
All right.
And guess what? We
Thank
don't have any other meetings.
You all.
Is-
Okay. All right. So
Yeah,
to
Thursday
wrap
night
up
for you.
with us.
Yes, so if you can get those, like Andrew said, by Friday, if earlier, that would be fantastic. So if you're feeling, super energized by Thursday, I think your rock star status by Friday, you're still rock star status. But if you could do that, then he and I will coordinate. And then I've already taken notes from what people said. I just want to make sure that everything was captured, since obviously, I'm here virtually right now. But I know there may be some public comment and some other things. So for our portion to wrap up, I'd like to end us with the same prompt that we started, I think, during our first session, which is for council members to go around and to answer one of the following prompts with just a few words. So I'm grateful for, I am committed to, or I'm excited about. And so if everyone could go around and respond to one of these prompts, that will sort of close our session together. And again, you'll get that documentation back to you all. And I'm also just appreciative again, I'd like to share, to have the opportunity to work with you all.
All right, who'd like to go first?
I'll go. I'm excited about the alignment. And I'm going to move this forward because I don't come across very well. I'm excited about the alignment of the goals that we just found with the 3 different groups that we did, and we all touched on 5 main points. There are a few other things that are coming in there, but it's good to see that alignment. I know we still have to tally these, but I'm excited about that and committed to the facilities and DPS in particular.
Thank you. So next,
I am grateful for next steps.
thank you.
I am committed to working together as a body to make sure that these things get done properly.
Thanks. I'd say I'm also grateful for alignment.
Okay.
From the I am committed to the ongoing check-in with our goals as throughout the year, and kind of being able to track ourselves in progress and activities. So,
And I'm grateful for, the alignment we talked about with the council, but I think along the alignment with some of the goals that staff presented with council and seeing what the best needs are for the city in the future.
That's all council. Did you want anyone else to go? Or is that it?
I think that is it. And I am grateful for always being, available to walk you all through or support on this process and the great work that you do. So again, stay tuned. You'll get that. And if you all can do that homework between Thursday and Friday, and then you'll all get, another version that'll be helpful for you all at the top of next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Oh, all right. Well, that wraps session 3 of our goal session. What? Our goal sessions.
Sure, whatever you said.
Yeah. I said. So next we will have our opportunity for public comment. Folks in the audience will have 3 minutes to address council, be it in person or by Zoom. We ask that no one signed up. All right, great. We ask that if you are going to speak in person, that you approach the podium, state your name and your address if you feel comfortable. The same on Zoom. And please stay within your 3 minutes if you can. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address council? As there's no one who was signed up pre. Please. Good evening.
I don't think it's on.
Okay.
1 second. I want to make sure we can hear you.
Yes. No,
I get your full 3.
I appreciate you. I'm going to keep it pretty brief tonight. This is just your friendly biweekly reminder that we are still in America, and racial disparities are persistent, and we have a unique opportunity here in Ypsilanti with a pretty high percentage BIPOC community members to make a difference in a lot of people's lives. And so I in no way think that council can fix systemic racism in America. I don't think I have the answers on how to fix that either. But I do think, like I said, we can impact folks here at home by looking at some policies that are kind of perpetuating some of these disparities, specifically, again, in criminalization. And there hasn't been an agenda posted for the YPAC meeting tomorrow or Thursday, but I'm hoping that they are going to bring up the ordinance amendment for the secondary traffic violations. And if not, I would just, again, urge council to address coming up with some language for that. I understand you guys have been, really busy with goal setting and addressing some staffing issues, but I just want to urge that be a priority for council. And then secondly, in fatal overdoses, which is we are still seeing a huge disparity in overdose deaths, specifically in Black men in the state of Michigan. There's currently 2 bills in the Michigan legislature, House Bill 5178 and House Bill 5179. They specifically address paraphernalia and support the creation of overdose prevention centers and drug checking, which are 2 evidence-based pathways to reducing overdose deaths. So again, we need to see ways to implement these strategies in BIPOC communities. IPSI would be a great place to start forwarding a policy on the municipal level to allow for quantitative drug checking. You know, it would require kind of amending our paraphernalia law to the extent that trace amounts are legalized for the sake of or decriminalized for the sake of drug checking, and drug checking equipment not be considered paraphernalia. And so yeah, that's something that I think, you know, in the coming weeks, hopefully I'm going to be able to discuss some more with you guys. And again, yeah, I appreciate your commitment to making progressive change in our city. It means a lot to me, and I'm sure everyone else in IPSI.
Thank you.
And on behalf of myself and CVS, we support the CVS being care-based safety. We support the appointment of Catherine Layton to the Human Relations Commission.
Thank you. Kat. All right. Good evening.
Good evening, and thanks for that visual timer. I appreciate it. First, I just want to say, like, thank you for the accessibility with the microphones for staff. As someone who's attended at home before, it's really helpful to be able to hear their input. So thank you for addressing that. And also, I want to say I appreciate hearing everyone's gratitude and commitment with alignment. And I really loved your suggestion, Mayor Brown, about revisiting the goals maybe on a quarterly basis. I do that as well in my personal and professional life, just to see where are my areas of opportunity, where am I kind of needing to go a little bit more focus on. And looking back, I know that last year's commitments or goals were centered around community mental health. And I know a lot of folks don't know this, but with the deinstitutionalization of state hospitals in the 50s, there was a huge spike in transinstitutionalization of people with severe mental illnesses being in the jail population. And as someone who's worked in the jails as a social worker and also as a criminal defense social worker, many of the jail deputies and administrators don't want that even. They're not resourced or well equipped to actually handle the drastic need that a lot of people with mental health conditions in jails. So unfortunately, jails have become de facto mental health institutions. So along with that, I know that budget, goal setting is helping with the budget. And I know that we have 60% towards public safety as expenditures. And I'm wondering if we could be a leader in this space, echoing what my comrade Korn just said about how IPSI can be a leader in this space of trying to invest some of that money into community-based initiatives, whether it be care-based safety or other, non-violent unarmed response programs, and also a center or a space for people to be able to go to. I know that we said in some meetings that we didn't have enough funds to be able to put forth a homeless shelter. But we were able to maybe make a rash decision quickly on a DPS building. And I understand there were circumstances surrounding that of safety that needed to be considered. So I'm wondering if there is a possibility during this time, if there's a way we could look at where some of those budget efforts are going and seeing if there's a way we can put forth money towards some type of non-modified space for people to just exist safely. So they're not being sent to jail and overburdening our jail staff. And also I would like to just thank council and the mayor for the possible appointment to the Human Relations Commission. I'm really honored to be considered, and I appreciate the consideration. And I look forward to working on some of those ordinances that are criminalizing poverty and homelessness right now in our city. They are a little outdated, and I know that we're busy and it's hard to refresh these things. So I'm looking forward to being part of that work. So thank you. And I hope you have a good night.
Thank you.
Also, Cat Ward 3. I don't know if I mentioned that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Please raise your hand. Anyone on Zoom?
If anyone attending virtually would like to make comment, please raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes to address council. No hands have been raised, council.
All right, seeing none, I've closed audience participation. Councilmember King?
Nope, I just wanted to, moving on with the next, agenda piece. I move to extend a job offer to Vester
Oh.
Davis.
Oh, we haven't, I didn't get there. Just
Oh,
yet.
okay.
1 second. I was actually gonna ask if we could take a break because I would like to be a part of the conversation, but I have to go. So, can we take a 5-minute break in between starting that debate?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. Okay, so now we'll move into the discussion on the city manager candidate vote. Councilmember King, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, so I was just saying, I moved to extend a job offer to Vester Davis as the city manager of the city of Ypsilanti.
Is there support?
I'll support.
All right, discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem. I just want to state again that I object to this being ahead of a council person for Ward 2. I think this is skewed, and this is the first time that we've appointed somebody to council this late in a meeting. It's always been first thing, and they've taken their seat, and we've moved forward with that. Having said that, there are things in general about this conversation about extending an offer. Part of the conversation is about the experience levels of the two people involved, or two last candidates. When I look at writing job descriptions and when I look at writing succession plans and career development for my own staffing, the first tier is always 0 to 5 years. And when I look at the two candidates, they both fall into that category. So the experience is very different, but I think of both candidates, I would require that there be professional development and training embedded in the contract, so that we have, just as with the goals that we have set, that we have regular updates and professional development designed into either candidate coming in. And I state that now openly because in order to have that in a contract, it has to be stated here, so that it's not a surprise when somebody gets an offer and then they get to the contract and they say, well, you have to do professional development and you have these requirements. That's 3, 6, and 12 months. It's not a shock to the system, but I think with the experience level that we have of applicants, I think this is totally appropriate to have that. And I think this would have been appropriate for the last city managers we had. I think some of the issues we had would have been recognized a lot sooner if we had something like this in place. So I spent a lot of time talking with people at MML and ICMA and the MME. So there are professional development courses and workshops for that, and training. There's also mentoring programs that I would suggest that either person we offer this job to go through that, because I think they're both new to this situation and new enough that should be a requirement going forward.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on this and just say, and then Councilmember Simmons, you can go ahead. I think that to me is not like a far stretch. I think anyone in my career, for instance, when you're in a professional role, ongoing training and development is a part of that, no matter what, for the understanding and learning of best practices, but also just ongoing training. So I think that to me sounds totally fine. Councilmember Simmons?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I agree. And I know we kind of started talking about this a little bit last time. For me, honestly, I feel like, I don't know. I mean, this is just overall, like, process wise, like, I feel like I have a lot of I still feel like I have so many like questions or thoughts and conversations, and And I think, even in some of the emails, trying to think about how we best get to hear from and integrate, like how staff were involved, and thinking about community involvement, and also just like different kind of interactions and with the candidates. And so I feel like I'm at a place right now where I think both of our candidates are strong in different ways, some in the same ways. And so, yeah, I feel like any votes for me are mostly, when thinking about, we do recommendations, there's like full yes, full no's, and then yes with reservations. And I feel like I'm kind of in that place. And so I appreciate the naming of the need for the professional development. And I also think that for council, as we think about our goals of bringing on someone, that there's actually a role that we'll need to play regardless, in terms of how to, think about that relationship with our city manager, and what we put forward, what we ask for, and just like shared like expectation setting and things of that sort, that I think will be very important. The only other thing I'll say too, so in terms of in particular for the candidate in front of us right now, Vester Davis, I will say that I found some of his answers and like responses in terms of some of the specifics that he shared to be compelling, and to be like I saw like connections to things that we need here in Ypsi. I did, in my outreach with community members, I had some community members that did name Vester Davis as their preference, but I will also say that I had a lot of community members that named Andrew Halinga as their preference. And in particular, just thinking about what it would mean to have someone to be new to the community, to be able to jump right in and get going in a timely fashion, and to do the work of both like understanding Ypsilanti and, moving from what we need to. So, and so, yeah. So anyway, just bringing those things forward.
While I do have a few issues with some of the process, especially towards the end, I think like Desiree, Councilmember Simmons mentioned, it seemed like when staff had interaction with the candidates, it seemed like it was a little more possibly one-on-one. I don't know, because we really didn't receive feedback from what happened with staff.
It was a panel, just to clarify, it was a panel.
Okay. So I put Vester Davis forward because I think he has the experience and he has the energy we need to move Ypsilanti forward. I spoke to many residents of Ypsilanti. I spoke to some staff member as well. And I just think he is the fresh perspective we could use here in Ypsilanti.
Thank you. Other feedback from anyone? Okay, so, I mean, Mayor Pro Tem.
Again, with the outreach, I have to say that one constituent said that we should start all over again. And when I expressed that was not going to be an option, there wasn't an appetite for that. But I offered that I would share that on their behalf. The same, I've gotten recommendations for Vester, and I've gotten recommendations for Andrew as well. And they very insightful commentary on those. But I think that it's, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But I'm not sure if I mentioned before about the evaluations and putting those professional developments in the evaluation, certainly in the contract, but in the evaluations as well. I think the issue here is getting up to speed. There's we talked about the difference between an internal candidate and an external candidate. There's pros and cons to all of that. In terms of getting up to speed, I think it would take Vester a while. I think, there's a lot of history here in the interviews. I went back and watched the interviews in reverse order because the night we did it, Andrew was first. So this weekend I watched them in reverse order so that I could get a fresh perspective on that. Vester did a good job of answering the questions, better than my first impression. I have to say that. But it seemed like there was not the research done to answer specifically in the context. He gave examples of things that he had done. But when I look at what our current staff have done, some of the things that he was talking about, staff who are not the city managers have done those things. So it's a more complicated system, and we have had staff that have done those things as well. It just struck me that there was very little context for the city of Ypsilanti and his responses, and I get that coming from where you've been. You use the examples that you're for, but if I'm in an interview, I do my research and I relate it to, if I'm interviewing with a company, I relate it to what's going on in that company, and I didn't get that. Except for the engagement and the information that's out in the community. He thought that was great, but I think that was the only example that he gave that said that he had paid attention to what was going on here. I think it would take him a while to get up to speed, not only just knowing staff and getting the perspective on the ongoing projects. That would take a while.
Councilmember Sweet.
Well, I guess I'll first start off and say I think that at this point, both candidates could do the job for the city, given what we've seen and what information we have. But I do believe that, kind of alluding to some of the things that Steve mentioned in regards to experience and such, that our current internal candidate, I think, does have more strengths and more assets that play into the needs of the city as an organization and what is to come in the future. There's been, turnover in several different aspects of the organization, and some departments that are struggling more than others with hiring and onboarding, et cetera. The list goes on. But I think knowing all that, I think having someone who has a good understanding and grasp of that already, and has already been working with some of the current staff and department heads in those areas to make some forward progress, and bring some stability, to the organization as a whole, I think is very much needed. And I think with, the learning curve, everyone's going to have a learning curve right from the outside. I think we understand that and know that. But I think what's best for us now and what we've seen, with our internal candidate is that, that person is capable, more than capable, and can fulfill the role. And in regards to professional development, I think, that's critical in every aspect. City manager down to every, employee in the organization as a whole, should have those opportunities, especially those department heads that are reporting to this new person. So that's it.
Thank you. Everything you want to share? I guess what I'll say in terms of what we have before us is that I think Mayor Pro Tem stated some of the things that I thought originally around the research on our community and the understanding of,
the nuance and really complicated things that go into being a part of this community and working within this community. When I heard some of the ideas that Mr. Davis gave, while they were really great and exciting, they were things that we had already completed, and those were not even completed by our sitting or previous city managers, but by department heads and other departments. And so it really, to me, was clear around the idea that being from such a small community, he got to get his hands in the dirt a little more. But also, what would that look like in terms of moving into a role? It's such a much larger community, a much larger staff. The other piece is that, I think all of us were doing some external engagement with community members and asking questions and wanting to really get external voices involved in this to make sure that we were hearing the perspectives of a wide variety of people. And I would say that while everyone had said no one has anything against Mr. Davis or Mr. Halenga, and that they both bring different, I would say, strengths as well as opportunities for growth. I really feel like there was, for me, an overwhelming support for the other candidate. And so I think that is important to keep in mind, especially some of the communication that we got from those who'll be working directly for that person. I really take that into high consideration, being that we are deciding as a body who will be leading all of our colleagues through some of the most challenging things that we've had to face in quite a long time. I also, again, appreciate more of the tailored responses to the needs of our community currently. And while there may be discussion and conversations with either candidate around like aligning how we get there with council as well as this chief operating person, I think that's really important to think about. And the fact that personally, I would say that Mr. Davis didn't come with, we are all over the interwebs in terms of all the things that are happening and information about things that have happened in this community, and to not have some more clear and concise ideas and drill down in the interview. That was your opportunity to wow me with that. And I would say in that area, that did not happen. While I do think he did answer questions well and from his experience, which I can't hold against him. I'll stop there if there's further discussion. I'm gonna give space and opportunity. All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mayor Brown,
No.
Councilmember Sweet,
No.
Councilmember Tucson,
No.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
No.
Councilmember Simmons.
No.
Motion fails with 1 yes, 5 no, and 1 vacant.
So I will entertain another motion or further discussion.
I move to offer the job of city manager to Andrew Halenga.
Support.
It's been a motion and support discussion. I'll start by saying I echo what I said before. I think that I said in the last meeting that having an internal and external candidate, there are pros and cons on both sides. While I think some folks feel as though an internal candidate has a leg up, I think it also allows for exposure in ways that you don't get to see with an external candidate, specifically in a process that requires interviewing and not much of a further deep dive into connection to previous employees or projects or how those things were executed, or the reception of the community or the internal structures around how that work has been done. I think that Mr. Halenga has shown a true commitment to this community and has been here and is passionate about this place. He's made it his home. He's raised his family here. He knows some of the nuances, and while there is growth that is required, I think there's growth required for all of us. I think Councilmember Sweet and Mayor Pro Tem stated that ongoing professional development should be a requirement of all of us. We're constantly, even ourselves, going to trainings about being city council members and learning what that means. And so I don't think that's a reason to detract from offering the role to folks who have maybe less experience than one would say they would have liked. I think we all have to dig in and further develop ourselves to move forward and to be better at our jobs every day. Anyone who comes in and says they're expert and knows everything, I wouldn't trust them personally. So I think this is an opportunity for growth and continued development with someone who has shown their commitment. And through the last half of a year or a little bit more now, we've gone through a lot and has really hunkered down and, to me, shown their ability to withstand praise as well as ridicule for some really hard decisions that have had to be made. And I appreciate that. And I think that that is the direction and that's the type of person that I would like to see leading our community at this time. Councilmember Simmons?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I think is important is, recognizing that that we're in a position where Mr. Halinga had to step into an interim role really kind of last minute and just kind of jump in into the heart of all the drama within the city of Ypsilanti. And so recognizing that there wasn't kind of a smoothness and there was no honeymoon period, and that won't happen. And so just thinking, just want to commend just the effort into really a really tough situation where there's a lot of need for learning by fire. And I think I'm hoping that that we'll be able to kind of see the fruits of that later on in terms of understanding what, being able to really see from that lens of what we need to address. And then also, I know for me, kind of going into this process, wanting to make sure that we as a body and the community were really keeping our eyes wide open so that we weren't really looking to decide on, without really fully considering our full options. I just want to, make sure that we understand the fullness of this decision and consider all of our options. So I'm glad that we were able to do that within the constraints of the process and our timing.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
One of the concerns of promoting an internal candidate is the changing roles of in relation to colleagues. And in that time that certainly within the last year and long before that, I think Andrew has been picking up a lot of the mentoring of other staff in the absence of that coming from previous staff and previous manager. And so there's been some roles that Andrew has stepped into previous to this. And so continuing that as an official manager, there's always that transition of how you relate to your colleagues. But I think on a certain level, he's assumed much of that mantle already. But I think things will change and we can expect to see those things change. Accountability among colleagues is one thing. Accountability to someone who you report to is a different thing. But I think that it can be negotiated well. I think Andrew has the skills to do that. As far as changing roles with council, the MML and I think the MML has an on-site program for just these situations. So when you hire a new manager, they can come on site. You can have, you know, a workshop for relationship building between the new manager, key staff and council as well. And I suggest that we put that into effect as well. And those are available in the near future. So those can be scheduled anytime. They have them offsite that you can do, but I think the onsite workshop for that can be scheduled about any time. So I suggest that we do that as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet.
I won't rehash everything that I said previously, but I will say that I think that Andrew has proven himself with the city just for his tenure and service and time and dedication, and in his role as interim. And I think that he is definitely ready for this next step to lead this organization.
Further comment, Councilmember King?
So one thing that I definitely agree with is the mentorship. As I stated on Thursday, one of the decisions that was made caused a current council member to be in recall. And another issue that I would bring forward is being the city manager is a huge job. So I think we should look for another clerk. I don't think that it's necessary
We have
that
to.
he would do both.
Yeah, we
Oh, no.
have to have a clerk. That's not negotiable. We have to have one. I do want to say something about the previous comment because it was stated in the last meeting as well. And I want to be clear that one person did not cause that, right? And I want us to also take accountability, myself included. We all as a body voted on things. And while information was shared, there was a sense of urgency and lots of things happened. I can't sit here and allow that to be stated that we're talking about the city manager, the interim city manager was the cause of this other effect. I don't think that's an appropriate correlation to the things, personally speaking.
If I could just respond. So I say that because in the interview, it was brought up, Andrew Hillinger brought it up that I take full responsibility. And so for me, my issue is Desiree Simmons could be me if I would have voted yes. She stated reasons why she voted yes. He did authorize it to bring it to the table. Again, he took accountability. So for me, I think I would have wanted him to take accountability or mention something to her publicly or privately. And because I know that did not happen, I'm not saying, oh, it's all on him. But in that interview, he did take responsibility. And that's why I'm bringing that forward.
I appreciate that, and I don't want to have a back and forth about it because I don't think it's an argument to be had, but I do want to clarify, I believe he took accountability for the process in terms of staffing. We lead all the people in this city. And so ultimately, accountability for how we make decisions is on us because we direct our city manager, we direct staff. And so I just want to clarify that I don't think it's appropriate to place the blame for something that community members and democratic process decided to do, which they came out against me as well and then removed it based on votes. But I would not put that onus on our city manager or our candidate for city manager at this time because we are the leaders of this community and make decisions going forward based on information that we do receive. And I believe he took responsibility for that, the process, not for what the community decided to do in response to that. Further discussion or comments? Being none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes,
5 yes, 1 no, and 1 vacancy. The motion carries.
congratulations.
Thank you,
City
Council.
Manager. I just want to, before we move forward, first, seriously, congratulations. I think you will do an excellent job for us. And I look forward to supporting you through that. And also, state that I want to thank council because this is a very difficult decision to make. And it's a really hard process in terms of not being able to always get all the information that we want or ask all the questions that we want to ask. But I think as a body, we made the right decision. And I'm excited about us being able to finally move forward and actually complete
some of these projects and things that we've been waiting to move forward on for months and months and months because we didn't have a permanent person in the role. So I thank all of you and I look forward to the work. All right.
Thank you, Council. I look forward to working with each and every one of you, and I'm excited to serve this city at this new capacity.
All right.
Can we address what the next steps in that are? There's a contract that needs to be drawn up and negotiated, and that comes to us. What's the timeline for that?
Mr. Ojak, can you help us with that? Just letting council know what would be next steps in terms of negotiating the contract and how that would come to us if you have that information. Mr. Barr will be doing that. Yeah. So
Unfortunately, he's not here right
yeah,
now.
so they be negotiating.
Yeah, when Mr. Barr returns, he and I will sit down, negotiate the contract. It will come to council. Council will approve that contract.
And so some of the things that were shared here will be given to him
Yes,
from the minutes
absolutely.
of the meeting to include.
I would want to put professional.
Yes.
Contract.
Okay. Is that clear?
Yeah, I'm not sure when John will be back from
He's
his
back in 2 weeks.
wintry trip.
So yeah, so how does that work if we so we won't have an actual contract until he gets back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, there's all types of interim stuff going on anyway. Okay. Yeah, it takes a while to go back and forth. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. All right. The next thing on our agenda is our Ward 2 vacancy appointment. Councilmember Simmons.
So I would like to make a motion to appoint Patrick McLean for the Ward 2 vacancy.
Support.
All right. It's been moved and supported. Discussion. You want to start, Councilmember Simmons, since you moved it, or no? Okay. You don't have to say anything. I was giving you the opportunity. That's it. That's it. You don't have to say anything.
I guess I'll just say so one, we've been getting a lot of outreach from different community members for both candidates for the appointment. I've appreciated the specificity that folks have shared in terms of Patrick McLean and his skills, and I see a lot of ways of working in, I can see very specific ways that he could bring those skills into our team membership and fill in for some gaps that we have here, and also can see some pretty clear ways that that we could work together, that I could work. So.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure. I want to thank both of you for your time in this endeavor. And encourage Jason to keep connected with this. In the end, I look at Patrick's extensive experience in city government, multiple larger cities, the finance background that, I don't think anybody on this council has that kind of experience, or probably anybody in the room has that kind of experience. But I think that was the driving force, just the depth of the experience and the broadness of that knowledge. That brought it to, I got correspondence in favor of both candidates. And I think the experience really pays off here.
Pardon me. Thank you. Councilmember Sweet.
Again, thank both candidates for their interest in serving the city. As I mentioned with our previous conversation, I think that both candidates would do well on this body and serving the residents as a whole. But I do agree that Mr. McLean's interview and depth of knowledge and background in city government lends himself to the front runner in this process to join this group and to best serve, the residents of the city and to take in consideration of factors that we may not otherwise consider at certain points and aspects. So.
Thank you. Further comments from council? All right. So I'll just say, yes, thank you to both of you, for your willingness to step up and support us, specifically during a really just tumultuous and difficult time when we have a lot of competing priorities. When we were getting feedback from community members, they were coming in about both of you. And your strengths show up in different ways. And I think that that is really great to know that we have members of our community who offer so much to their neighbors and to our community in such different capacities. I want to lift that Mr. Keach, the neighborhood and your neighbors talk so highly of you and your support for the neighborhood and your interest in being a partner and being thoughtful and being a really great communicator. And, Mr. McLean, a lot that came up was around your wealth of knowledge in terms of the work that you've done and also being an open door for folks in the neighborhood, folks getting to hang out on your porch and talk with you too. Very similar in that way around folks love spending time with y'all. So that's good. And so I think either of you will do a great job up here. And this one is a kind of a hard decision for me because I see the benefit of having both of you, and I wish we could have both of you, but we have to choose one. And so I want to share my deep appreciation for both of you. This is not an easy role, and so to volunteer your time to go through this process is not lost on me. So thank you both very much. Is there further comments? All right, seeing none.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
6 yes, 1 vacancy, the motion carries.
Congratulations, Mr. McLean. Councilmember McLean, welcome.
Bringing him up. And
Yeah, he's gonna Can you come up to take? You want to come and take your oath of office? And while he's entering again, thank you so much, Mr. Keach. We really appreciate you. Thank you very, very much.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States. Constitution of the State of Michigan. And the Charter of the City of Atlanta. And that I will enforce the laws of the United States. State of Michigan. And the ordinances of the City of Atlanta. And that I will faithfully discharge. Said office. According to the best of my ability.
All right, congratulations.
I know I was going to. We had.
Oh, is that the wrong one? Do we have an extra packet? Okay, thank you.
Wow. I have it right here. I don't know. I was just.
All right, and then you get to come. I had to clean up my space for who's gonna sit here because I've been using both of them.
Oh. I like that shirt.
All right.
and then there were 7.
Now we have.
Oh, look at it.
All right. Okay. So then you'll get the remainder of these resolutions here that we have for this evening. Yeah. Welcome to the fun.
Be here.
All right. Okay, Councilmember Tucson, you have our next resolution.
Indeed. So resolution number 2024-008. It is resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that whereas Aaron Smith has resigned from his position as interim city clerk as of January 19, 2024, and whereas Andrew Halinga, the interim city manager, will need to fill the role of both city manager and city clerk until both positions can be hired. And whereas serving in 2 roles will require a lot of extra work and effort, which needs to be recognized and compensated. And whereas the former city clerk's hourly rate was $39 $39.20, and whereas paying Mr. Halinga an additional hourly premium of $16.16 will raise his current hourly rate of $53.83 to $70, while still saving $23.04 hourly. And now therefore it be resolved that Andrew Halinga's hourly salary be increased by an hourly premium of $16.16 effective retroactively from January 20th, 2024. Be it further resolved that his hourly premium shall be in effect until both a full-time city manager and a full-time city clerk are hired and start working. If Mr. Halinga is hired as the full-time city manager, the $16.16 hourly premium shall be added to his new salary and remain in effect until the start date of the new city clerk. And I so move.
Or
Been moved and supported. I brought forth this resolution when I didn't know when we were gonna vote for the permanent city manager role. This is just in line with what we have done in the past when we have folks, particularly in these higher executive roles in both functions. The hiring of the city clerk is another process that is done by council. And so we have to think about what next steps for that are going to be. And when we can get that posted, I guess I'll ask you those questions in a second to tell us like what to do here. But I do think that this is a heavy lift to be functioning in both roles. And so I do think it's important that we prioritize now the hiring of the city clerk to make sure that both of these roles are filled. And again, we can continue with the momentum with these permanent positions. So that is why this was presented before you tonight. Councilmember Simmons?
Yeah, thank you for that. Because one of my questions was around like previous practice around this. I know that we've had a lot of staff who've been stepping up as we've lost a lot of staff. So, and so I was wondering about like the precedent, I suppose, for this. So that was one question. So I'm happy to hear from that. And then the other question is just in terms of, I was wondering why we haven't pulled together or posted the clerk position, because we had the resignation last year, at the end of last year. So would love to hear about that process, and but also like maybe why we've delayed it to this point. And then the other question I have is just around how the amount was selected. Yeah.
What I will say before Manager Halinga speaks is that we have done this in the past and in departments. We just don't necessarily see it because the city manager does that with staff. So it's coming to us because we oversee this role, both of those roles. So that is why you may not have seen it when other department heads have gone or different things have consolidated. And then I can give it to. And
I just
you want to say something?
To your one point is why we haven't posted it is because we just decided tonight what his role is going to be. And if we went with another candidate, he would revert back to being the clerk. So tonight finalize that, and that's why we haven't done that.
Yeah, we couldn't post for a clerk because we actually already have a clerk. Well, had a clerk until tonight.
In my conversations with MML today, I alerted them to that possibility that we would need to hire a new clerk, and we needed to decide whether we're going to go with them as a research or what. But I would suggest doing that.
It all depends on what city council would like to do for that search. If you wanted to post it right away, we could do that. You just have to set a salary range. I can get it out to people at the BOE, the Bureau of Elections, as well as Washtenaw County. But if council prefers to take a executive search through a company, that we could do as well.
Emily from MML had said that was not as common as the executive search for a manager, but they have done them in the past. And I'm sure there are other agencies that have done them as well. So that is a real question of whether we just do it ourselves and go from there.
If we don't use them for the executive search, will they still post the position for us? Like they'll share it on their
Yeah, for sure.
website, classified, etc. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the question about the amount. How was the amount? How did you decide on the amount?
I looked at percentages like from previous times and just kind of
So it's like a general
general
percentage
percentage
of what it
rounded
is.
it to a number that seemed like it was, feasible and fair. And then of course we have the right to increase that, whatever, but I thought that this was on par with what, when I asked Aaron to send me previous like examples, it was close.
Thank you.
Councilmember McLean.
Madam Mayor, members of council, how does our current clerk salary compare with comparable cities? Do we know that?
Clerk salary at least when I left the position, it was competitive with surrounding jurisdictions.
We just,
Yeah.
we just did an increase.
But if you want to, depending on the salary range you wanted to make, I would suggest between like 70 and 85. That would keep you competitive with the region.
We also just increased it because Andrew was filling the role. So bringing a new person in is not going to be Andrew, right?
That would be based on the contract with Andrew, not necessarily our baseline for how
Well,
much we pay, right?
The way the city clerk's contract usually works out is they have a starting salary and you put that in there. And when I came on at 80, and then I've subsequent raises following that. But I think that if you want to stay competitive, I would stay around 70, 85.
Fair. Further questions, comments, discussion on this? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 6 yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
Councilmember McLean.
apologize, Councilmember McLean.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And then will you send us like the two options that you just talked about? So we can or do we need to just tell you that if we want to do an executive search or what we want to?
It depends. If you want me to bring you information, then you could do an approval at the first meeting in February. If you wanted me just to post it and give me a salary range, we can get it up tomorrow.
If we do consensus right now, can we just do that, or would you like
And make a motion and
Okay.
that's up to council.
Do we have thoughts? Do we need more time to think about this?
I would like, oh, go ahead.
Whoa, everybody. I don't really know who's hand. I saw Evan's hand.
But
So I'm gonna start.
I was in the way.
You're in the way.
You can
I-
start. over.
So
You go ahead.
I just had
Last
a-
time I jumped in.
I just wanted to make, we only have one meeting in February, right? So if we don't do this now, then we have a
We're gonna
whole
wait till
month. Just, okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so so we have to make, I would prefer, so I mean, I guess if we're making a motion, I would make a motion to post it.
Yeah.
And I would say with a salary range of 70 to 80 commensurate with experience.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there support? Support. All right. Any discussion on the motion? Mayor Pro Tem.
How old is the job description that we have and how relevant is that?
It would definitely need some updating. There's a lot more tasks that the city clerk undertakes now, so I'd have to do some updating, but I would make sure that it was current.
And I do support posting it. I think we'll get good candidates from a posting rather than having to go through an executive search for this.
Right, that's also added cost
Yeah,
and time, so. yeah.
that part as well. Further discussion on the motion? Anything?
I would encourage going to 85, between 70 and 85. I think you'll broaden your applicant pool.
Do you all support that? Those who moved and supported it? Friendly?
Sure. I mean, I feel like that's a really wide range and
It gives council something to play with, and to be honest with you, given that this is a presidential election year, you're gonna want to get people with more experience.
So do-
Mm.
So is that
all right.
a friendly or
Sure.
Councilmember King, do you support?
Okay.
So we're voting on the motion to post with a range of 70 to 85, commencement with experience. I believe is what Councilmember Simmons stated.
Can you forward the
Job
job description before posting?
Yes, I'll have to do some edits and then I'll send that to council tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion, Manager Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, you have our next resolution.
The most important of the
Yeah.
evening, I must say. Thank
Absolutely.
you very much. Resolution number 2024-009, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the minutes of the January 9th, 10th, 16th, and 18th, 2024 city council meetings be approved, and I say move.
Or
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, seeing none, please call the roll. Yeah.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
I'll abstain since I was not part of those minutes.
motion carries with 6 yes, 1 abstention.
Thank you. Councilmember Simmons, you have our next resolution.
Yes, resolution number 2024-010. Resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti. Whereas the Sustainability Commission has adopted certain bylaws requiring regular attendance. And whereas Devin Shelton is a member of this body who has missed 3 consecutive meetings. And furthermore, be it resolved that Devin Shelton be dismissed from this body. And I so move.
Support.
Been supported. Discussion. Anything?
When did the term start?
When did the term start?
Yeah, for Devon Shaw.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember, but what I will say is I feel like I remember that it started, and I personally have not been at a meeting where we've been there together. I think it's possible that there was one meeting that I missed that Devin was at, but I have not seen them.
Thank you.
How many
Members?
open seats are there now at this point?
Oh, I was looking at another case
Oh,
right now.
yeah, because I think there might be.
I don't know if
two.
it's up to date. There are. No, there's vacant. 2
Plus our youth
and then
or
2
youth.
youth according
Yeah.
to the website.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, if this passes, there'll be 2 vacant seats and 2 youth vacancies.
What's the makeup now of ward?
Representation. Councilmember King.
Let me see here.
I don't think we list that.
We have 2 members outside the city. We have 2, at least 2 Ward 1. We have, I'm like trying to, I'm like, where
He's
is
got
it?
it.
I have the composition.
Oh, okay. I'm like,
There is 3 Ward 1, 2 Ward 2s, 1 Ward 3, and this member was.
Yep.
So he's your only Ward 3 member.
Oh,
I think maybe one of the people in Ward 2 is actually now outside of the city. So. F. Gibbons. The chair.
No,
She's outside. Yeah.
She's outside.
There's
Oh, did you-
Shannon and there's a person from college.
Oh, okay. I just didn't hear the other people outside the city, sorry. Okay.
I was wondering, has there been any communication of why he's missing?
The staff liaison says no.
Further discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen,
Yes.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Resolution number 2024-11, resolved by the council of the city of Ypsilanti that the following residents be appointed to the Ypsilanti boards and commissions indicated below. Michael, Parks and Arts, and Catherine, Human Relations Committee. I so move.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? Councilmember Sweet.
I'd like to amend the expiration terms of the two candidates to fall in line with the rest of the commission that they'll be serving on. So that would be July 1 expiration dates that year. So they fall in line with the city's fiscal year, which is what Parks and Arts and HRC both have currently in place with the rest of the commissioners.
So the expiration would move to July.
Correct, July 1 instead of February 1.
Is that an amendment?
I'd like it to be yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah, there's a motion. Is there support for that?
I mean, do I need to support it or?
Anybody can support that. Yeah, support it. Okay. Any discussion on amending it to correlate with the other expirations for fiscal year July 1 end date? I feel like Andrew, you about to say something about that?
I'm just double checking. Yeah, both HRC and Parks and Arts are July 1st expiration.
Okay.
Thank you for confirming.
All right, so we will vote on the amendment. Or it could be a friend. Gonna be a friend.
Gonna be friendly?
Gonna be friendly. All right, so Councilmember King, did you support this, Evan?
Yeah, I supported it. Sorry.
Okay, so you all friendly? All right,
Yes,
great.
correct.
Awesome sauce. And then you can call the roll.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Sweet,
Yes.
Councilmember Tucson,
Yes.
Councilmember D Simmons,
Yes.
Councilmember McLean,
Yes.
Councilmember King,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilcoxen.
Yep.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Parks and
Welcome.
Parks and Arts.
All right. We are now at liaison reports, Police Advisory Commission.
So the Ypsilanti Police Advisory Commission has a meeting this Thursday, the 25th, and I was just emailed by our chair, Ms. Gail Wolkoff. And we'll be talking about obviously we'll have our monthly report from Chief Moore. I'm gonna have a discussion about the police interaction survey, spearheaded by Commissioner Mohammed. We're gonna be speaking about the pretext stops. That's gonna be spearheaded by Commissioner Humes. And then we'll be talking about community concerns and questions about YPD, council liaison, which is me, my report, and then any reports from commission. So if anybody would like to participate in the conversation that we will be having on Thursday, and just to air out anything that you may have for recommendation for us to talk about at YPAC, anything that you have on your heart, please come to the Ypsilanti Police Advisory Commission on Thursday, right here in council chambers at 7 p.m. right here at 1 South Huron. Please, I hope to see you. All right, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, Human Relations Commission.
We will meet on January the 31st, which is a Wednesday.
The new member.
Yeah. Was it that? Oh, okay. Parks and Arts.
They just met last night. We did lose one commissioner recently. They're working on a priority list and plan for goals for this year. One of which will be the Parks and Recreation Master Plan for the city, which our current plan is 2020 to 2025. So they're going to be working on that in addition to several other aspects that'll be keeping the loop on.
Thank you. Sustainability.
We haven't had another meeting since the last one, but one thing I just want to mention too that came up during that meeting and that we might want to make sure that we update all of our commissions about is is the new, within the new policies that we put forward, that the commissions would come to do presentations for council. And so wanting to make sure that our commissions are aware and that we schedule those with them before we move into our budget season.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great reminder. There are some dates that we're supposed to be coming up with folks who reached out from other commissions as well.
So I think is HDC, we have to decide.
Oh, do we have to should we reshuffle?
I mean, we can unless you're okay with being our HDC lead.
Okay with that.
Okay. Do we have to do anything formal or can we just state? All right, well, Councilmember McLean will be our HDC liaison.
That also ZBA.
And ZBA is, yes, it'll be two, but they need as pretty much.
Yeah, I'll get you in touch with the staff liaison of the HDC and the ZBA.
Okay. Thank you. Planning Commission?
Planning Commission met last week. There were no cases before the commission, but there were 3 discussion items that it was an epic meeting. It
An epic.
went, well, yeah, it went till after 11 o'clock. So
Oh, wow.
they're usually very prompt and done by 9 and often done by 8. But the 3 items were the RV ordinance. And so there were extensive revisions to that. So that will be coming forward as a resolution from them in the near future. The other thing was a review of excuse me, electronic message boards. And there was a case that went through the ZBA, and the ZBA referred it to the Planning Commission in terms of lighting. And so that brought up a much larger discussion about lighting within the city and lots of violations along Washtenaw and various other places of broadcasting LEDs that are blinding to drivers. So it wasn't just the reason the ZBA sent it forward because they thought there was going to be multiple, it would extend out. And so they're looking at that. And then the other thing was cannabis, which last year in August, there was a resolution put forward or an ordinance change that had language that would make administration of permits more clear, and it failed because at the time it didn't reduce the number of businesses because the zoning requirement was the way to regulate that, and a number of people on council wanted to reduce the number of retail establishments. With the zoning as it was, it allowed for up to 6 new permits for retail with the buffers that we had. So Planning Commission discussed lots of different options that were not really within their purview, but also changing the buffers on some of those things so that with that, it would reduce it to 4 possibilities instead of 6. And they had a preference for actually having caps, but they will be having public hearings for the cannabis as well. So there'll be a lot of public hearings coming up for the Planning Commission in the next month.
Thank you. So we just assigned you to ZBA. SEMCOG.
Nothing at this point.
All right. Watts.
That was former council member Simmons.
Oh, it was.
So
Anybody
what does-
interested in Watts?
I might be interested in Watts. But I don't, when are their meetings?
That I don't know.
I can get the schedule and email it to you if council wants to determine the member at the next meeting.
Okay. Urban County. That meeting was on the 11th. There wasn't really anything. Does anybody? Nothing special. No. DDA.
DDA actually did not have a
Quorum.
quorum, but there was some discussion on an RFP for,
Lisa's behind you. Yeah, I know they're usually over there, so you can't see them. Yeah.
Yeah, the mic doesn't work.
Oh, the mic's off.
Don't let her talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
RFQ to release it when the DDA attorney has a look at it and reviews it. The RFQ is for the Depot Town Plaza. We're looking for proposals for a redesign and public participation. Also, we're looking at, aside from that, our community services, our administrative services agreement to work on that on our end to return it back to the city. And then also looking at the DDA director contract as well, so that we can move forward there.
Thank you. Rutherford Poole.
I have not had a meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to council proposed business. I'll start. Okay. You want to go last today?
Yeah, I'll go last.
Fine. Councilmember King.
So I only have one thing. As far as snow removal, I had a resident complain on Watland. They stated that in past years and this year so far, the snow has only been removed on one side.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Simmons.
Ooh, okay.
Alrighty. This has been a busy week, lots of calls. So one is around so again with sidewalks, obviously we're in snowy iciness. And so there was concerns about lack of sidewalk enforcement, and thinking about what we could do around that. I had another, jump to something else. So, which is just to say that, well, anyway, sorry, let me just try to do this in this order. So sidewalk enforcement and thinking about different ways that we could improve overall walkability, which I know is horrendous. I mean, I walked here and it took me much longer than expected, and I probably almost fell 4 times. And so knowing that this is a big issue, and so something that I think on the long term that it would be great for us to actually think about how we do this differently and look at other communities, what they do to make it easier for people to actually get around safely, and to remove some of the responsibility as we have it. And something that I'll just mention that we've noticed is at my house, we had a median garden, and that actually used to help because it would actually catch, even when the vegetation is lower and dead, it actually helped to catch a lot of the snow and ice from getting onto the sidewalks. And so now we had cut it down, we do it every so many seasons, and we're seeing, actually there's a lot more making it on. So that's just, anyway, something to think about in terms of different ways that we can think about how to not make it so even when we're plowing that it's getting onto the sidewalk. I'll jump to another enforcement piece because it will come with an ask. So I also had someone reaching out about rat issues in the Depot Town area. And from their assessment, they were actually asking about the zoning and the responsibilities of the businesses for 2 trash pickups. And so I don't know if that is, I haven't had a chance to look at that, but I wanted to ask about it. If there's some different responsibilities for the businesses. But overall with this, and there was another enforcement question. But overall, I would like to meet with the enforcement department to better understand issues from their perspective and to think about what we need to do at the policy level to improve implementation of our goals while improving the experience for residents, because this is sometimes people's first time engaging with the city. And I talked to multiple not happy folks based on this engagement with the city. And then went and followed up, looked at some of the things, and I had questions, especially recognizing that, you know, it's not always easy to understand how it's happening, how it's even. I know some, you know, and how are we discerning to prioritize actual like health and safety issues. So I don't know. So yeah, I think I have to go through the city manager to set up that appointment. Or
Council's actually not supposed to meet with staff outside of department heads and the city manager.
so who is the department head that will be over enforcement?
Well, that's under community services, which doesn't currently have a department head. I've been managing building department, so I'd be happy to meet with you about it.
Okay. I know, because I've been waiting for this building department situation for like almost a year. Because I've been wanting to talk about other things with building department. So yeah, so we could meet, and then I'll definitely want to be like front, like the new person comes on, I'll probably be knocking at that door too.
Absolutely.
And then we already talked about the desire to try to like think about, and maybe it's also like thinking about the different commissions that could look at some of the different changes for our code. So maybe when we're thinking about like the challenges we have with the tent encampment, maybe that's something that maybe the HRC might be able to take on or something. So I'll come back to that. The other thing is I also had some folks, so talk to some folks about some challenges and wanting to think about what the city could do around short-term rentals in particular. And had some folks name issues where they tried to rent in Thompson Block as an example, but couldn't because like 70% of it is for short-term rental for people who are like live in Florida or wherever. So that's something I'll try to look at. There's some examples I know regionally around this. And so we'll try to pull some examples forward for us to look at. And I don't know if that's also something that would need to go through like the planning commission or something like that. So I don't know. Another thing I wasn't sure about whether it will go through the planning commission is also something also came up during the Thriving Downtown IPSI meeting that we had this morning. We were looking at the different policy solutions that people had suggested during our last meeting. And so there were some things that seemed like maybe quick wins or quick things that we could look at. And one of them is around parking minimums. So they talked about somebody in the, I think downtown, that was interested in actually doing some renovation for their housing above a commercial space, but that there's a parking minimum for that. And so that makes a challenge for them to be able to add that downtown. And so, yeah, so I don't know if those things would come through the planning commission. If I have something else I have to like ask them about. So should I just take that there? And then the last thing I will say is just that we're currently right now, this week, is strike for Palestine and for a ceasefire. And but we're here. But I still want to just name and actually just really show again appreciation, and that I think we should be really proud that we were in leadership on this issue, as we're seeing many bodies regionally following our lead on this issue, and recognizing that we're still here. We're over 100 days into this conflict. And so I just want to say ceasefire now and free Palestine. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, all that stuff would go to planning commission, especially the parking. So, two things. There seems to be a leak at the corner of Grant and Elm Street, near the tot lot. There were postings about it. I contacted Michael Bodery, who's the YCUA board chair, and he didn't get back to me. So I want. Okay, cool. And that was ours, or that was theirs? Okay, got it. Thanks. Never got a response from that at the end of the day, but thank you for that. Wow, I just told. Oh, another yucca issue. So the alerts from the state come out, and Eagle has a grant opportunity for drinking water affordability, and I forwarded this over to Luther Blackburn and Michael Bodery, and got an earful about how Eagle has changed their their regulations for how they give money and the criteria for who they can give money to. And I bring this up because Yucca has done a fairly good job in the past of working with customers to set up payment plans. But then every year we come up and we have a meeting where everybody's water bills that have been unpaid go onto their tax liability. So I sent this over to Luther and Michael, and they're going to work. They hadn't seen it, and so they're putting in an application. So this deals with the affordability and planning for low-income households. So hopefully they can get back to us about the status of that when they do it. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet.
I wanted to pass along some kudos to DPS that was shared with me from some neighbors and residents in Ward 3 about snow removal, specifically in their promptness to neighborhood streets with this significant snowfall. Was well appreciated, so they could get out of their driveways and out of the neighborhood. And then the second one was also I'd been asked from a couple of residents from River and Forest about the removal of the construction signs, and I'm glad to see that the contractor has since taken those detour signs away, so they're very pleased with that. And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember McLean, anything?
Nothing tonight.
All right. Councilmember Tucson?
Yes. Okay. So I would like to highlight something that I didn't get to highlight these past few meetings because of all the things that we're doing. So last December, I had the opportunity to go on a police ride along with Officer Gibbs. We had did a night shift. He had took me through all the zones that the police do go ahead and patrol, and it gave me a deeper found respect for what our officers in the city do and what officers do around the nations. And I'm just really excited to see what the new officers that are coming in are gonna do, and to expand the kind of policing that I've seen Gibbs do, because he didn't necessarily pull people over to ticket. He gave them warnings and things of that nature. He was very, it was a nice ride along. I'm actually looking forward to going to another ride along in the spring, summer, when crime is supposed to pick back up again, because it's December, wintertime, crime is low. Second of all, I would like to speak about a event that I had the opportunity to go to yesterday, MLK celebration event. It was hosted by Leah Chapman Mills and the Washtenaw County Community Mental Health BLM Task Force, and it was centered around Justice Now. And when I got there, Leah asked me to speak a little bit, and she asked me to give a call to action. So the same call to action I gave to the crowd that was there, I want to extend to the viewers in present and the viewers virtually. So right now we're experiencing a lot of children, at-risk children and children who are returning back to the community from juvenile or jail. And I would like for everybody to reach out to a child that you know is at risk, or reach out to a child that you know is returning into the community, and uplift them, give them things to think about and do other than the things that they were doing before to get in the position that they are now or they were in. That's about it. Thank you.
Is it possible for me to add one more thing?
Sure.
Just because when you talked about youth, it just popped up one other thing, which is that so we have Ypsilanti has a youth poet laureate program, and so the applications are in, and the coaches are now in the process of reviewing those applications, and we'll be making recommendations, and that should be I'm one of the coaches, and or judges, I don't know, but I'll say coach. And so those will be coming forward. And so I think now that by the time we come back in March, we'll probably have someone who's been selected. So I'll be able to share that then, but just want to say that we got some good applications in. And so thanks for folks that shared that opportunity for us to have some youth leadership.
Councilmember King, go ahead.
So I was wondering about the ride along. How do we schedule those? I know I asked about one a few months ago. So I'm just wondering, what's the process?
Used to be Dr. Wendy, but
As Chief.
We have applications. You submit an application to the PD and we approve it and schedule your ride along.
Thank you.
it is pretty cool.
It's really fun. I enjoyed it. They had me throw on the vest and everything. It was pretty cool.
You were just
Had me with a vest and a
Oh.
floodlight. Oh, it was cool.
Did you get to work the siren? Come on.
I did not get to work the siren, but I got to get out of the car with the vest on, and it was cool. Like, it was cool. It was cool. It was cool.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it thoroughly.
Oh, okay. I've never been on one in all my years, so I would like to go on one and see
Please
what's
do.
going on. So, I guess, let's see. The other thing that I'll share tonight is that I have been invited to participate in SEMCOG's Justice 40 Task Force, which is basically their work to center equity in communities in our region in Southeast Michigan. And so I'm looking forward to participating in that, gathering information from other local elected officials, as well as SEMCOG employees to bring back here to give guidance in the way that we develop, our plans going forward. And I think our first meeting for that is next week, where we'll kind of meet the other members of the task force and kind of get the overview and prepare for the work that we'll be doing collaboratively together. So I'm very excited about it. And I look forward to sharing, what I learned with all of you. And then I do want to thank DPS for their work and getting out ahead of, some of the snow turning into slush and ice and all that messy stuff. Exactly. Our employees over at DPS, and be grateful to them. I think that one of the things that is a trend and folks talk about all the time is how Ypsi's snow removal is top tier. And, there are definitely times where things are harder than others to get right. But one thing that we take pride in is that. Yeah.
Do you want to tell or?
Oh, we love good news. Okay, we love good news. You can take my time. Go ahead.
Well, what Bonnie is referencing is the city was awarded a grant from Domino's Pizza, and we're to use for snow equipment. So we'll be yeah.
Thanks, Domino's. All right, plowing for pizza. Is that what it's called? Oh, that's
Plowing
it.
for pizza, yeah.
Thank you, Domino's. Again, going back to our goal setting and revenue generation.
Yeah.
Awesome sauce. Thank you.
Oh, that's even better.
Thank you,
Yeah,
community.
Thank you, community. Yeah, exactly. And I'm excited about that. We can use $25,000. Yes, we can. uh, yes, we can. And then I'll kick it back to you, city manager, for any additional communication.
So as council has been saying, thanks to DPS, I want to extend that also to the police department and the fire department for all their work during the recent storm. I was during goal sessions, I was thinking about how we can tool it in a way that will be most effective for us. And I'm going to create a survey to send out to council and department heads. And I think we should begin earlier trying to plan what we want that process to look like, so it's more effective for us. And then just to end, I just want to thank council again for the appointment. I really, really look forward to, serving this community into the future. This is my home. I love it here. So thanks again.
Thank you. All right, this is our second opportunity for public comment. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to address council, please raise your hand. HRC Commissioner. Yeah. Good evening.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up two issues. One, I wasn't speaking about this, but then Councilmember Houston, when you mentioned your experience with the ride along, I want to, in the school to prison pipeline and juvenile justice, residential facility to, prison pipeline. I first wanted to acknowledge and remember two students that I lost to gun violence. They're on Thinking Phillips and Axel Rivera in Texas, who are on Taylor Square, Michigan, in the city of Ipsy. And so with that, I know last year's goals were, some of them were centered on community violence intervention team. And so I look forward to hearing how that is going, and what the efforts of the city have been and moving that in, because gun violence is at an all-time high, and it has been for years, as council has acknowledged throughout history of meetings. And so I also wanted to bring attention, because there was a comment about the recall, or the petition for recall of Desiree Simmons, Councilmember Simmons, and the accountability piece. And so I kind of just want to pause for a moment and just acknowledge that there is only a call with the city clerk office earlier this year, and there's only $25,472 allotted for general elections. And we have two for sure coming up this year. And so, looking back on the reason for the recall, it was mostly based in fiscal irresponsibility. I also did not think that the decision to buy and purchase 599 South Canfield was the best decision that council had made. And I do know that Attorney Marr asked for a special meeting because of the concerns of public transparency and Open Meetings Act. And so in that November 9th meeting, council, heard from folks and decided not to, and then did. But it's always been acknowledged that this can, if you will, quote, has been kicked along for decades. And so I just want to bring voice to the fact that even though I disagree with the vote that, Councilmember Simmons and some others on this council had done, and even though I think that entire process could have been more transparent, especially given the Open Meetings Act conversation being removed from the advisory boards and commissions, I do not agree with the recall for Councilmember Simmons, as I think that is fiscally irresponsible as well. And I think that it is important to consider this recall as a learning opportunity for council to come together and be in alignment of where they want to move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to council? You do? Come. Yeah, come on. You got 3 minutes. Oh yeah, keep switching around. Yeah, you're right. You can use that. You can use that one. Wait. You can use that one. Use that one.
It was off that
I
whole
can hear you
time.
so well. I didn't.
Yeah,
even
that's
It's like a price.
Yeah, okay.
No, I wasn't even gonna say anything the second round, but then Councilmember Tucson, your words kind of prompted me to want to say something. I definitely know that recidivism is an issue. And it's definitely more tragic when we see it in youth, when it's youth recidivism, you know. In general, that's something that I think we need to like look towards trying to curb at all times, you know. And again, you guys all know my perspectives on criminalization. And it's pretty apparent how like criminalization leads to recidivism, you know, directly. But especially in areas and with communities that are disproportionately impacted, you know, one way to address recidivism more than a call to actions, you know, some actions to take would be to look at how money is being spent in those communities. And again, funding opportunities for education, funding opportunities for mental health treatment, equitable access to mental health treatment, funding opportunities for harm reduction instead of punitive abstinence-based responses to substance use. All of these things will directly impact recidivism and incarceration rates in our community. So even though it is important, you know, to spend money in areas that might not have a direct impact in reducing recidivism, like increasing salaries for police officers or purchasing new vehicles for police officers, we might can think about when we're making decisions to spend that money, if we're serious about taking actions that help impacted communities equitably in spending that money in different ways, in more progressive ways. So, but I appreciate you bringing up, you know, youth recidivism. I think that that's something that we see here in Ypsi that's very impactful, and we should, if we can, you know, shape policy and move money around in order to affect that. That's something that we have a responsibility to do. So, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address council? Look, I'm looking. Anybody? Anybody on Zoom?
If anyone on Zoom would like to make comment, please raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes to address council. No hands are raised.
All right. What? Oh, I was like, wait a minute. Okay, well, seeing none, thank you all so much. The meeting is adjourned.
All right. Thank you.